Hello? Greetings, imagination connoisseurs. One more time. I am, of course, the Viceroy of Verisimilitude, your master of fun and wonder, your existential Mr. Rogers, your sommelier of sci-fi, your chancellor of cheerfulness, your existential Mr. Rogers. And sometimes you can hear me, and apparently, sometimes you can't. But let's start this show again, shall we? All of you imagination connoisseurs, all of you members of the Post-Geek Singularity community, welcome. Welcome to episode number 361 of Robservations, the show about something. Something seems to have happened. Very interesting. Technical difficulties. It was weird because it was showing that sound was going in, and I can see my little sound meter, like right now. I hope you can hear me. But then I realized, that the chat's over here. I have to look off camera. I don't do that when I'm reading. So I apologize. Anybody who sent me in super chats and all that, I will get to them. I have not lost them. So we are here, and I'm going to get back, and I'm just going to start this show from the very beginning. And, by the way, something else happened here that I didn't fix. Yes. My lights. Things are just happening here. They just happen. But anyway, lights, camera, action. The show must go on, ladies and gentlemen. And while all production is halting in Hollywood, I am sticking around. My production is not halting. I'll be coming at you 7 days a week. And as I said before, I want to thank everybody for joining Elizabeth and I last night for her very first episode of Elizaviews. Whining about movies. And last night, of course, our debut show, we drank wine and talked about David Cronenberg's sixth feature film from 1983, Videodrome. And we're going to be doing these shows, I think, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday night. Again, I want to thank everybody for being so kind and offering Elizabeth such warm greetings and salutations. It really meant a lot to her, and it meant a lot to me. Although we had 5 downvotes before we even started the show. I'm like, really? She was already nervous as it was. But that's what YouTube's all about. And it's okay. But I thank you. It was a rollicking good time. It was supposed to be an hour show. It almost went 2 hours. That's because of you. You imagination connoisseurs. You members of the Post-Geek Singularity community. I suppose I should look into the chat. Can you hear me? I would hope so. Anyway, it was fun. It was fun. As you might notice, I've changed things around. The configuration of the Robservatory is different. Yes, I've reconfigured things. There's all kinds of stuff changed. You can't see it out there. But as Elizabeth pointed out, and many people pointed out, yes, the Hot Toys wall is coming. It was very funny getting my balls busted about how many Hot Toys figures I have in boxes. It's very funny because on top of these bookshelves, running around the top here, are Hot Toys in boxes. And Elizabeth, it drives her crazy because there's glass shelves, there's cases inside our house that have Hot Toys figures on them. Of course, I never lit up, but I'm going to. Everything is happening here. It's all happening. Like that guy in Almost Famous said. I think it was Jay Baruchel. It's all happening. It's all happening. Zeppelin's here. Bowie's here. It's all happening. So this is Robservations episode number 361, and I wanted to talk about our business, the film business, the motion picture business. It's really, I can't comment on stocks and bonds and anything like that, but I can comment on the motion picture business. It's something I follow with religious fervor. I have since I was a young kid, and that isn't going to change anytime soon. But what I was reading for apparently 17 minutes before anybody, what was that like, watching me read? What a laughing stock I am. But I'm man enough to take it. I'm man enough to admit my mistakes. The show must go on. And we are going on. We are going on like nothing ever happened. So what I was reading, if you hadn't heard me read it before, I was reading Richard Rushfield publishes, it's a newsletter, I guess he has a website called The Ankler. The Ankler is, he ankled the job. The Ankler, giving Hollywood the business. And I really like Richard Rushfield's take on things. And I also think he's a very good writer. So you can write to him at richard@theankler.com. Or I suggest everybody subscribe to the newsletter because he sends it out every day or a couple times a week. And the Ankler, it's a really great journal about the entertainment business. And he sent out a great article today, and I would like to read it again. and maybe my reading will be better since I've had rehearsal for it now. I will read this again. Again, this is Richard Rushfield's The Ankler, and Giving the Hollywood the Business. And this article is called Into the Covidiodrome. Into the Covidiodrome. Covidiodrome? Into the Covidiodrome, ladies and gentlemen. Into the Covidiodrome. And I flew another sick in the wall through sick and thin. When I launched this journal a little over 2 years ago, I thought my weeks would be made of summoning humdrum workaday outrage about things like, how can they say this movie's going to open at 45 million? Clearly it'll be lucky to do 30 million. And why did Peter Rice's parking space get moved 3 slots closer to the front door? Things like that. Instead, weeks after I launched The Ankler, the Me Too movement happened, and Hollywood's long overdue reckoning for some of its more extravagant monstrosities washed over the industry. At the same time, the streaming war transformed itself from a sideshow to the titanic showdown for the entire future of entertainment, under the weight of which entire studios would be wiped off the earth. And somewhere down the line, some new order would emerge. As I've watched Hollywood absorb these shockwaves, I naively expected at each turn that the industry would take stock, recalibrate, and emerge stronger, better, more forward-looking, more inclusive, and better prepared for the new day. Instead, each jolt has shot through the system and never stopped shooting, and Hollywood 2 years later has been staggering around in a sort of walking, nervous breakdown. Now, in that condition, we get the news that an asteroid is coming, and it's aimed right at us. It's been an interesting time to be observing this industry, I'll say that for it. Requisite disclaimer, I am not suggesting that Hollywood will be the greatest victim of this. We're just talking about finance and livelihoods here, not life and death. But all that said, as business goes, we are uniquely positioned for devastation, beyond anything we've experienced, and at the moment when we can least afford it. Or to look at it another way, for the past few years, a lot of media savants and the weight of the tech-enamored finance community have said that the theatrical business is an outdated, fading model, doomed to be swept away soon enough, and that any studio that wanted to be a part of the future should push theatrical aside, go all in on streaming, and just get on with it. Now, we'll get to test how well that theory works. On the positive, the world is going to be needing entertainment, and particularly the entertainment that we produce, more than ever. They are just going to be ingesting that in a different way, and at a different price than we're used to. So something will remain at the bottom of all this. It's just getting from here to there and seeing who is strong enough to make that journey. That will be tricky. Some data points for the Covidiodrome. After Mulan and the park's closure, not to mention the cruise ships shutting down production and whatever giant hit consumer products must be facing, Disney grabbed a silver lining where they could find it and announced they were putting Frozen 2 up on Plus 3 months ahead of schedule. No one has yet grabbed the scenario I floated a week ago, that the corporate overlords would take this as an opportunity to kill the window and shift the entire corporate weight to streaming by putting their big movies for this year straight up on their services. As of this writing, that still seems like it would be a crazy, self-defeating step. But this long, dark night is young. The need for some sort of boost to the bottom line is going to get a lot greater before we're done, and a lot of things that seem bonkers now are going to be seen as common sense before we're through. With the events having unfolded, the abrupt Bobzik certainly looks more than eyebrow-raising. A kind spin would be that he was exhausted by the day-to-day duties and thought a fresh leader, particularly one of a logistical bent, could handle this better than he could at this point. But still, it's hard to imagine, knowing all the secrets of the universe that a Disney chief has access to, that he didn't know this was coming. He's speaking about Bob Iger here. That said, has there ever been a major corporate CEO who has been handed a harder first month on the job than Bob Chapek has? We should all say a prayer for him tonight, because much of this industry rests on him being able to see Disney through this in one piece. One more point I made when I spoke to Vulture for this excellent Mulan piece by Chris Lee. Imagine if this had happened 1 year or so earlier, say just before the opening of Endgame. If it hadn't come during what was going to be Disney's relatively lean year by its standards, but at the top of its world-devouring year of total domination, imagine if they'd had to call that off. How how much of a chump must Gavin Newsom feel like, having given all that ridiculous press conference where he announced that Disneyland, of all places, was being exempted from crowd restrictions, only to have the rug pulled out from under him 3 hours later when Disney announced they were closing. Let this be a lesson to folks that this situation is changing by the hour, and be careful thinking you found a safe rock that will let you stand above the tide. The mind boggles at the amount of dislocation this will bring about. Does the whole release calendar just move back 6 months? Are these productions that are being shut down, all of them, how do you rebook everyone's calendar to fit everything? Will Disney be able to Bigfoot everyone out of the way and just step on previously announced openings on the calendar and make competitors move? As for theatrical, how do we begin to think about when will be the optimum release time again? After all, we're going to go through how serious we're going to see this virus is. Just because a muted all clear sign is sounded doesn't mean the world is going to be in any hurry to sit in a dark auditorium full of strangers. This virus will likely recur in waves after the initial one passes. How long until people feel comfortable with those movie theaters again? Again, with the average American going to the movies like once a year and half before this, it's not like the absence of moviegoing will leave a big hole in people's lives that they're going to be desperate to fill. One still gets the sense that there's a moderate amount of denial about how bad this is going to be. When this weekend's box office totals $0 million combined, that should focus the mind a bit. Then again, it's had to say that this weekend's box office would never have been much above $0 million. Opening this week is Bloodshot with a 31% Rotten Tomatoes score. I Still Believe with a 42% Rotten Tomatoes score, and The Hunt at 54%. Which sort of encapsulates why this hole is going to be so hard to dig out of. How do we begin to estimate how big this hit will be? The Hollywood Reporter took a stab at it and went with $20 billion, which seems more of an opening bid than a full accounting. But taking that number as a starting point, at current valuations, that's the equivalent of 2 Viacoms or 20 Lionsgates that will lose. That's if everything goes back to normal by the end of May and the summer can be saved, which I would call a pretty enormous if right now. How many of the studios are in a position to ride out their share of that and keep the lights on? The streamers may be best positioned not to be hurt, but a global recession is going to shrink the potential subscriber base at a moment when they need every viewer on the planet. As far as the great conversation or great conversion to the streaming model goes, it's not so much a question of whether there is a real business to be had in streaming, but whether in the mad, overheated hunt to win the streaming wars, the players got so overextended that there's no longer any model that can support the place we're in now. In sum, did they go into debt for $1 million in the race to win $100? Building a sustainable business around the amount of money that's actually there will require some kind of dramatic restructuring, i.e., a bunch of companies are going to go out of business. If some of the studios cry uncle and put themselves up for a fire sale, who will be the buyers? Apple and Amazon remain the likely suspects, but would they want to take on the studio just yet? For a library, maybe. Taking on a legacy studio infrastructure? Less likely. Plus, be careful what you wish for. Look at what Amazon has done to Whole Foods in less than 3 years. It's destroyed what had been a pretty good workplace culture. Just yesterday, even when Comcast was removing excess fees and data caps, Amazon encouraged Whole Foods employees who were healthy to donate their sick days to fellow workers who were sick, as opposed to, the world's richest man extending sick leave to all employees. The stores suffered from shortages well before the current hoarding panic shopping, and what had been perhaps the gold standard for a grocery store shopping experience has been converted into a warehouse of professional shoppers fulfilling deliveries, and any actual customers in the stores are treated somewhere between being an afterthought and in the way. Now translate that to what would happen at Sony, Lionsgate, or Paramount under the king of Hollywood, Louis B. Bezos. The superstitious among us might wonder whether it was a moment of hubris on the part of Bob Greenblatt himself that brought the wrath of the gods down upon us. He was going to give a keynote address called "It's the End of the World as We Know It and We Feel Fine." That's a consumer boss, Bob Greenblatt at Warner Media. He was going to give that. He was going to give that address on March 20th. Finally, A note after a somber issue. I've been very proud during these. I don't need to read that, but this is from, again, Richard at The Ankler. This is his newsletter. I highly recommend subscribing to it, but it's pretty great, and that's Richard Rushfield. You can write to him at richard@theankler.com. I guess theankler.com does have a website because it's theankler.com. I suggest anybody with a cursory interest in the entertainment business to go to his website because it is outstanding. Now, as I was also doing, I was reading a Hollywood Reporter article that ties into this that I want to read as well. You saw me reading it, but I'll do it again because it kind of sets the stage for the rest of this conversation. So let's go back to the article. I hope you can still hear me. It looks like you can hear me. I'm looking in the, let's see. I think you guys can hear me. All right. This article actually was in the Hollywood Reporter yesterday. Box office. Moviegoing slows amid coronavirus pandemic. A trio of new nationwide releases are coming in behind expectations, while Holdover Onward is facing the biggest second weekend drop in Pixar's history. Moviegoing has begun slowing noticeably in the U.S. amid the coronavirus pandemic, according to Friday box office returns. Early projections showed Disney and Pixar's family-animated film Onward staying at number one in its second weekend with around 12.5 million. That would mark a 68% drop, the steepest decline in Pixar history. The Good Dinosaur fell 59%. And the trio of new films opening nationwide this weekend, I Still Believe, Bloodshot, and The Hunt, are all projected to open behind expectations. Tallulah, no. The weekend box office could be impacted anywhere between 15 to 35%, according to analysts. They'll have a better sense once the Saturday business unfolds. She knows I should have not let the dogs back in, but I did. Tallulah, I'll give you a cookie. And that's it. You have to be quiet and go to sleep where you were sleeping. I made a place for them to sleep in here in the Robservatory. So there's one for you and one for you, and that's it. No more cookies. You've had too many already today. No, buddy, you got to go. The weekend box office can be impacted anywhere between 15 to 35%, according to analysts. They'll have a better sense once Saturday business unfolds. The good news, some people are still going to cinemas. The bad news, revenue could hit its lowest level since a weekend in September of 1998. I Still Believe, a faith-based pick from Lionsgate and Kingdom Story Company, is eyeing a $10 million to $11 million debut. The last film directed by the Irwin brothers, I Can Only Imagine, started off with $17.1 million in 2018, not adjusted for inflation. Several weeks ago, many box office analysts were putting I Still Believe at $13 million to $14 million. However, Lionsgate has always tried to expectations to $10 million. The movie earned a glowing A cinema score and is performing best in the South and the Midwest. Sony's Vin Diesel action pick Bloodshot is on course to open at $9.3 million, while Universal and Blumhouse's controversial picture The Hunt, eyeing a $5.5 million to $6 million opening. It was hoped that each would come in about $2 million higher. Bloodshot received a B cinema score, while The Hunt sat toward the back of the class after earning a C+. The fast unfolding events of the week have left the film and exhibition industries reeling. On Thursday, more films were pulled from the release calendar, including A Quiet Place, Part 2, Mulan, and Fast 9, raising the question of what will be left for theater chains to play this month and next in terms of new offerings. That was followed by Friday's news that many U.S. theaters, including mega chains Regal, AMC, and Cinemark, are operating at reduced capacity in order to provide plenty of room between patrons. Distribution sources say that Thursday marked the first time they saw a marked dip in moviegoing due to the coronavirus. That trend continued on Friday. Come on, buddy. Come on, Gilly. No. You've had too many cookies. Too many cookies, Gilbert. Too many cookies. No. Too many cookies. Come on, bud. Come on, bud. No more cookies for you. Anyway, so for the motion picture business, things are dire. And as many people know, they did some interesting things to try and get people to come back in to the theaters, which was sell sometimes half the tickets for an auditorium that they normally would sell if they were going to sell out, to leave that much room so people could have a lot of space between themselves and others, which I think was a unique solution. But let's face it, this situation is still developing and we don't know where it's going. I think I have to give it up for everybody's the quick response after things started slow. It has been very interesting to watch what has happened. In a way, I feel kind of heartened by their reaction, because it shows that, look, in a crisis, we can do the hard things. We can do it quickly as long as we have the proper leadership in place. Unfortunately, our leadership was a little slow on the uptake, which isn't surprising. But now we're at a place where I think things are good. The idea of social distancing is good. I will be continuing to come at you. I will not stop this show. I'll keep it going for your entertainment value. And again, whining about the movies will happen 3 days a week, as long as we can assume we can go to the store to get bottles of wine. We'll see what happens. But one of the things that I found interesting, I really didn't know much about how this disease worked and why it's so dangerous. And I did watch a Italian doctor on the news today. Well, it was a clip on YouTube, and he sort of explained it. And distressing to me was, he said a lot of the people in Italy that have been hit are between 40 to 60. A lot of 40 and 50-year-olds have been affected by this virus. But what's so, I guess, insidious about all of this is where it hits you. It hits where oxygen goes from your lungs into your bloodstream. So what's happening is it's interfering with the ability for blood to get oxygen because of what's happening in your lungs. And that brought the danger of this into full relief for me, because obviously that is crucial, as I cough, to surviving. So I understand a little bit more why and what's going on. This is extremely damaging to the lungs, and obviously if it affects the oxygen uptake into your system, that's all I need to know about how dire this is. Now, what I was saying before, I was so rudely, well, I wasn't rudely cut off. I just didn't even know I was cut off. But, as I was saying before, and as I've said on this show, one of the things people don't understand is, first of all, movie theaters, as John Campea pointed out on his show the other day, movie theaters they don't have a large margin. There's not a lot of room for error. Even as many people know, they make a lot of their money through concessions. They make money through concessions. So if people aren't going to the movies, they don't have months or years to last. And they rely on the summer movie season to keep them going. So we're in a real pickle. The movie theaters are in a real pickle, because ultimately, like Richard Rushfield pointed out in his article, even when this passes, even when this first wave of worldwide infection passes, it'll come back again. And how long will people want to go to movie theaters? Will they want to be in groups, big groups? Do they want to do that? And I think things are going to change. And it's something that the movie business is going to have to deal with. And as everybody's ramping up for streaming, it's like physical media. My beloved physical media, as much as I do love my physical media, the reality is that the studios, they don't want to produce it anymore. Disney has shown, they basically had a fire sale. They were putting all the last gasp of Disney physical media is happening with 4K releases. And of course, the Skywalker saga for 4K box set is happening. But I have to tell you, I have access. The Disney Movie Club is selling the 4K discs for like $14 each. And it's pretty disheartening. Disney Plus is a physical media killer for Disney, because everything their entire catalog is eventually going to be on Disney Plus. And I think it's great. I think it's a one-stop shop. I have said that every child, somebody pointed out to me when I was saying this last week, somebody pointed out that a lot of kids today don't have a Disney phase anymore. That there's more things that are on the more, as I've always said, there's more entertainment choices, whether it's your video games, your iPads. So kids aren't necessarily watching Disney cartoons as much as they used to. And I think that could be true, but I still think that Disney as a family destination, having Pixar, having Star Wars, having Marvel, that Disney Plus is going to be a perennial. It's just something people are just going to have, because I don't see it going away anytime soon. But the problem is, they got to keep people coming back. They've got to keep growing their subscription services. And in terms of Disney Plus, they did very, very well. But 28 million subscribers is not. They need 10 times that. They need 280 million subscribers. And what's happening now? Netflix has obviously been borrowing to the hilt. Billions of dollars they've borrowed. The studios, of course, borrow money to make movies and television. And a lot of television shows deficit spend before they're in the black. And it really affects the entire business. And are these, as the Ankler pointed out, as Richard Rushfield points out, are they going to be able to survive all of this? And the people that work in production, like I'm lucky that I have this YouTube show, and I'm lucky that I've always depended on the kindness of strangers out there that you support the channel, because luckily for me, I have work. I'm producing the special features for The Hills Run Red along with director Dave Parker. So, I mean, it's not that lucrative, but it's something. And of course, we'll be able to continue. What's great is, where I produce, I'm out there producing The Hills Run Red, the special features. You know where I'm doing it? Right here. Right in the Robservatory, right on these computers. I have 3 screens in front of me, and all of my production happens right here. I mix the sound, I do all the editing, I do all the color timing, I do it all right from here. And I'm also, same is true if I'm working on marketing materials for Tango Shalom. After that, I start Scars of the Shambach, and there's another film that, hopefully, if it goes, I'll be going to the Ukraine. I'll be going to Ukraine to make a movie, which is looking pretty good. I actually have a meeting about that. It would be something that Gabe Bologna also will be directing, that he wrote. I would be producing and editing, and we'd shoot in Ukraine, which would be pretty cool. So I'd be doing Robservations from the set. Can't even tell you what the movie's called, but it'd be in Ukraine, probably, and maybe a little bit of shooting in Greece. I love shooting overseas. As many people know, we made The Hills Run Red in Sofia, Bulgaria, and that was a hoot. I mean, in terms of production, I love going places, working on films where I get paid to go there. In the aughts, obviously, I was in New Zealand on Lord of the Rings and Chronicles of Narnia. I went to Australia for a year working on Superman Returns. There's nothing better than to go to a foreign country and live for a time on someone else's dime. It's the greatest thing ever. Of course, then I had to make it possible for my other team to come and... Yeah, anyway, it's all good, but who knows when this will happen? In a way, it's kind of a blessing in the sense that I can finish all of this stuff and move forward. But there's a lot of people, people live paycheck to paycheck, even in the entertainment business. The workaday production crews, I mean, yes, people get well paid on big projects, on television and things like that, but also people rely, if you're working on a TV series, you're planning on getting a certain amount of money over a course of however long that show could be in production for, say, 30 weeks. However long, and you have a family to take care of. And that has ended, and that's just the entertainment business. Then there's all the businesses around that rely on that, on people's disposable income, whether it's restaurants, retail. I mean, this shutdown and no amount of government bailout is going to be able to help everyone. There just isn't that kind of money. So it's going to be very interesting. I'm curious to see where this all goes, but the entertainment business is going to be hit very, very hard by this. And everybody who works in the entertainment business is going to be hit very hard. But the real question is, are movie theaters doomed? Are they doomed? I would like to hope not. I don't want movie theaters to be doomed. I love movie theaters. I've been going to them since I was a little kid. And movie theaters to me, I mean, I've said they're my church. I think a lot of people feel that way. And I think it's important that they stay open. But obviously, they've got to, this crisis is going to continue. And, we're going to have to, get through it together. But I know that ultimately, for the studios, what is the incentive? Obviously, they want to make $1 billion. The number they want to hit now, tentpole movies. Let's hope they make $1 billion. I mean, the Broccoli Company, Michael Wilson and Barbara Broccoli, their job, they made the rhythm section, which didn't do too well. I actually kind of liked it. I wanted to see more because it's based on a series of books. But their job is to make James Bond movies. They hadn't made one in 5 years, but Die Another Day, not Die Another Day, No Time to Die represents a $250 million plus investment. That's not even marketing costs. So you're looking at probably another $200 million. So that they have to make $1 billion. And if there's no movie theaters for people to go to, those movies are not going to make their money back. Now, could they possibly put it on? The problem with putting something on streaming is that the movie then becomes part of a huge pool of other movies. And how do you, is a studio going to just buy the movie outright? Are they going to spend $500 million or let's say the movie costs $250 million? Well, there's got to be a profit there. So what are they going to, they can't afford to do that. So they can't afford to buy that. Or maybe there'll be some weird new pay-per-view model. Like for 1 week only, if you spend $50, you and your friends can see the next James Bond movie. But who knows? I mean, I don't know if they would do that because there's piracy issues. There's all kinds of craziness that's happening as a result of what's going on. And I really don't know where things are going to go. I really don't know, and I can't. It's hard for me to imagine what's going to happen. And just like Richard Rushfield and The Ankler, and I think Hollywood is there. Everyone's looking, going, well, what is going to happen? Because really, this is a business that produces one product. We produce entertainment. We produce movies and television. And there's more of an audience for those things now, perhaps, than ever before. But nothing is going to be made. It's going to be, what are we going to do in 6 months? What are we going to watch? And like Richard Rushfield so aptly pointed out, what happens when the people start making things, and where do they go? Like, are the release schedules, are they just going to put everything back? What about the things that already are on those release schedules? I mean, it's a crazy time. And then the streaming services are not going to have anything new for a while. But I will say this. I have a movie, Tango Shalom. We haven't sent it out to anyone. I've been still creating marketing materials for it, trailers and such that we'll have ready to show potential buyers. So if anyone out there from the industry is looking for something to put on their streaming service, say in the next 3 to 6 months, maybe in 6 months, I have a finished film for you. That's right. I just have to make more deliverables, but I have my Netflix spec sheet, which is just enormous, but it's a good place to begin. And I know that this other project that I've been working on, which is kind of neat, that I can't talk about because it hasn't been officially announced, but I've been contributing in an extremely small way, but it's a Netflix show that will be ready for its debut sometime in the final quarter of 2020. So I've been working on that too, which is a lot of fun. But I'm not trying to be coy going, I got a secret. No, it just hasn't been officially announced. And there's a lot of people involved, and you can't, like, I couldn't officially say that The Hills Run Red was coming out on Blu-ray until it was officially announced. And Amazon jumped the gun. I don't know if Scream Factory or Shout Factory was ready to announce that it was, but it is. And I had been working on the special features, not in earnest, but for a while. Now I'm working on them every day because I'm producing. Me personally, I can talk about this. It wasn't even released. I'm producing 12 pieces for the disc. I won't say exactly what they are, but I am producing 12 pieces for the disc. Dave Parker has produced 3. I've been covering the material that was shot during the film's production, and then Dave Parker, the director, he has been doing new material, new interviews, new pieces that are great, by the way. I watched one finished. He's done a bang-up job, but as I've said before, Dave and I work together on, I expect he does excellent work, so I expect, and he directed the movie, and I produced the movie, so this will be it won't be self-indulgent. It's actually, it is a great, now this is June 16th, pre-order, The Hills Run Red. It comes out June 16th, which is great, and I'm very, very excited, and if nothing else, even if you hate the movie, and a lot of people, let's face it, they don't like the movie very much. It's not their cup of tea. And of course, it's not entirely the movie that we set out to make because it was deeply compromised because the studio thought we had gone beyond the pale. And indeed we have. Indeed we did. And so the film, it was definitely a hard NC-17. And now it was pulled back to being a hard R. But there you go. And no, it'll be the regular version of the movie. We did not go in and do it. I would say a director's cut or a filmmaker's cut, whatever you want to call it. But it's still, for what it is, it's a lot of fun. But I will say that the special features will be worth buying the disc alone for, because they're very informative and very interesting, if I do say so myself. So that production continues, which is something good. Now, I'm just going to put this, because I can't get into this. I don't want to talk about Star Trek today, but this is a Reddit chat with Michael Chabon when he answers questions about, I'll put it in the live chat, it's in there now, where he answers questions about Star Trek Picard, and I think it's interesting. Obviously, he knows his stuff. I just wish it's so his writing on Star Trek is so incongruous with what I know about him as a writer, and it is, in fact, frustrating. But anyway, that's what I'll say. Let's see who is here. I know that there is people have sent in super chats and things like that, and I will get to those now, starting with, let's see, Willow Yang. I want to thank you, Willow. You send in a chat every day before the show starts, and I very much appreciate that. Willow says, I tried showing my mom Gladiator, and she complained that Russell Crowe's face is too round. She did think that Connie Nielsen is beautiful, however. First of all, you must not malign Maximus Decimus Meridius, father to a murdered son, husband to a murdered wife. He will have his vengeance in this life and the next. How can she think? Russell Crowe is such a badass in that movie. And by the way, where's the Big Chief figure? I pre-ordered it like 2 years ago. Big Chief out of the UK was doing the Spaniard figure of Russell Crowe. And where is it? Why don't I have it? They're announcing that their Live and Let Die figures are shipping, but the where's the Spaniard? Your mom must, tell your mother, Willow, tell your mother that I, a strange man on the internet that she doesn't know, demanded she watches the whole movie, even though his face is too round. He's a badass. I demand. Jet Screamer sent in tell her I said so. Tell her. Jet Screamer sends, you guys sent in a super chat that there's no sound. You know what? I should have looked. I don't look at the super chats to I gotta, it's hard when you're trying to produce the show, and I apologize. I want to thank everybody for, by the way, I erased that already, so you can't go back and watch my idiocy. But thank you for that. And also, Stubble McShave says no sound, and Paula tipped, and Paula, she sends in a tip too. Broovies with Matt sent in a super chat saying no sound. Paul Lee sent in a super chat saying no sound. Roberto Suarez sent in a super chat saying no sound. Cheryl Morris sent in a super chat saying there's no audio since you started, Rob. Mr. Mondragon sent in a super chat, there's no audio. Brandon Valenzuela sent in a super chat saying, Rob, I just realized there is no spoon. Brandon Valenzuela sent in a super chat saying the Viceroy of talking for 20 minutes with no sound. Just kidding. I love you guys. Stub McShave sent in a tip. Hey, Rob, now that there are fewer movies in the cinema, you have some time to spare. Maybe you could read a book or two. I have a suggestion if you can't come up with one yourself. Our man, Stubble McShave, our man in Sweden, who we've met on the show. Stubble loves Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time series that I didn't know was also, after he passed away, was continued on by another author. Maybe I will do that. I need to get the Wheel of Time series, and I want to get that tasty hardcover. If I get it, as you can see, I still have a hardcover fixation. I mean, I've got what's really fun is I as I have been going through all of my stuff, I've been sort of changing things around and dusting things. Oh, actually, I didn't mean you can see it. Actually, what I want to show you is on this shelf. One of the things. My paperbacks, ever since Grady Hendrix' book, Paperbacks from Hell, came out, I've been going through all my horror paperbacks from the 80s and stuff, and they're in pretty great shape. Like here's my novelization for Halloween 3. I mean, this isn't, look at that. I don't ever, my spines are, this is from 1982. This is a paperback from 82. And my paperbacks, I like to, And also I found, it's really funny. Here's some, and I won't, well, I've got like, you can see it. So, I mean, I found these. These are from the 60s. These books are actually from the 60s. Killer Dyke and Pagan Lesbians. I got these at a paperback show. I mean, and also, let's see if it's here. Oh, yeah. This is awesome, too. This is from the 60s as well. Sexville, a seething volcanic potpourri of sex in suburbia. Right there. Sexville. I think these are funny. They have paperback shows. There was one, I think it was last week, the paperback show, which I go and find these. I love finding these books. I don't read them. I really haven't. I mean, I've probably flipped through them. But the covers, I love the covers. So, there you go. Also, talk about an old book, my paperback of Logan's World. The sequel to Logan's Run. This is my paperback from Logan's World. I mean, look at that. That's like a mint condition spine right there. This book came out, I think, would you stop, Tallulah? 1977. 1977 this came out. So it's actually been fun going through the Robservatory as I've been cleaning up. And you got to stay away from what's going on here. As I've been cleaning this place up and rearranging things, it's a lot of fun. But I am going to start a new show. It's not going to be a live show, but I'm going to start doing shows I talked about called Off the Shelf, where I'm just going to pontificate about stuff that's in here, which I think would be fun. Just 10-minute, like Logan's World. I could do a 10-minute riff on Logan's World, because why not? Anyway, let's see. Back to these. So yes, you know what, Stubble McShave? I'll get those hardcovers, and I will indeed read the Wheel of Time books, because I need to be able to talk to you about them. I mean, to be honest. Come on now. Come on, Gilly. Why are you barking at me? And you're making me nervous. Let's see. Stubble McShave says, Why you gotta be that way? Tallulah, why you gotta be that way? No, why? Why do you guys have to be that way? Is that, do you like that? I know. These dogs. I love these dogs, but there's a reason I haven't been letting them into the show. There's a new interesting dynamic that has happened since I'm out here. They're used to seeing me in the house now. I mean, we're 3 months into this, and I've stopped letting them in for this particular reason. Tallulah wants my attention always. She's madly in love with me, as well she should be, but damn it, she can't bark. Anyway, Stubble, I will get around to reading these books. I really do, because if only for you. You know what? I talked about having the Robservations book club, and I've now I might as well do it, because no one's going anywhere. There's nothing to do. What is your problem, Tallulah? You're making funny noises. She's a very loquacious dog. Yeah, I understand. Okay, what does that mean? I wish I could speak canine. I don't. But it would be fun, I think, if we did. Maybe we should. Maybe we should start the Robservations book club, like I talked about doing. I thought Hyperion should have been the first book, Dan Simmons' Hyperion, which is, of course, right up there. Maybe we should make it Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time in honor of Stubble McShave, one of the founding members, I guess, of the Post-Geek Singularity community. What say you, all of you imagination connoisseurs? Does the Wheel of Time, could that kick off the Robservations book club? If I do a Robservations book club, I've got to get one of my favorite other YouTubers, Mariana, whose channel Impression Blend. If you don't watch Mariana and Impression Blend, she's a wicked smart genre fan that's very easy on the eyes, that also covers books. One of the reasons that I found her channel, no, I know she's cute and all that, but I found her channel because she covers books. It popped up in the feed. And she would be somebody to collaborate with on something like that, because I do appreciate any YouTubers that cover genre literature. And if you know of any YouTubers that cover horror fiction as opposed to science fiction, horror fiction, is there a horror channel that covers horror novels specifically? I think it would be cool to do sort of if I could find a channel that covers horror novels, maybe we could do a confab of YouTubers and start an online book club. I think that'd be kind of cool, and we could rotate it around each channel. But I don't know. I don't know anybody who does. Roberto Suarez, my man Roberto Suarez, says, for those concerned about toilet paper shortages, consider installing a wand bidet, an inexpensive and easy to install bidet system for standard toilets. You can find them on Amazon for around $30. Well, that's good. I like that. You know what, though? I mean, I don't know about a bidet. I just, since you brought it up, I got to be able to wipe. I'm one of these people that I don't stop wiping until there's no skid marks on the paper. It has to be perfectly clean. You know what I mean? I know that's probably more information than you need to know, but I like to be ready for action no matter where I am all the time. So I have to be very, very, very clean. Of course, a bidet is always nice. I like the way it feels. Swack Props sends in a tip and says, when I first started watching the original series, it was from renting the Laserdiscs with 2 episodes a disc. The first one I watched began with the alternative factor. Yeesh, I almost gave up, but I endured, and luckily the next episode was City on the Edge of Forever. Wow, was that actually a Laserdisc? Was it I guess it would be. Was it Alternative Factor and City on the Edge of Forever? God. Look, I'm going to admit something right now. For all of my expectations, for all the smack talk I give to Star Trek Discovery and Star Trek Picard, by the way, deservedly so. The Alternative Factor, which is a first season original series episode, is god-awful. No doubt. But I love it. I don't know if you'd call it a guilty pleasure, because I've actually stated this on numerous occasions, that I am not afraid, people. I am not afraid to say, when I was a kid, I liked the Alternative Factor, and I think back now, I still like it, even though I know, it's god-awful. I know it is. But it has a really interesting threat, and I still like it. I still like the Alternative Factor. PC sent in a $2 super chat and said, can we see Tallulah Bankhead? I love dogs. Well, sure. Tallulah, come here. Oh, Gilly, are you okay? Come here. Come on. Come up here. Come here. I know you're sitting down because you're... Come here. Come on. Yes, come on up. Yes. Yes, there you are, Tallulah. Somebody wants to see Tallulah Bankhead, so wait, hang on. Here. This is Tallulah, right? Hi, Tallulah. Oh, she's such a good girl, even though she's loud as fuck. You are very loud. Look, there you are. Do you see yourself on the camera? Do you? That is Tallulah, and she loves coming up here because she... Yes, you are. You're so good. Yeah. Her breath always smells like dog food that's has a vanilla scent. I actually find it kind of pleasing. We buy very expensive pet food for these dogs at Pet Food Express, which is hideously expensive, but I like Pet Food Express. And you know what's really cool about Pet Food Express is they actually have... like a car wash, they have a dog wash where you go in there and you buy these tokens and you turn it on and they have everything you need, and you go through the different cycles to wash the dogs, and we wash them both together, and it's kind of hilarious. So PC, I hope you enjoyed seeing the Tallulah. She's not, however, named after Tallulah Bankhead, although that's interesting. We spell her name the Irish way. It's Tallula. I think that's how it's spelled. It's spelled exactly like Simon Le Bon's daughter from Duran Duran, although that was just a coincidence. It's the Irish way. Jay Oliveria sent in a super chat and says, send me some suggestions of Star Trek novels to read. You know what? Somebody asked me this yesterday, and I will tell you. If you like depends which series you like. But I would say one of the greatest Star Trek novels ever written, if not perhaps the greatest Star Trek novel ever written, is Judith and Garfield Reeves-Stevens' book, Federation. It is truly epic, and it combines... It came out before Generations, and it was a much better story. No offense to Ron Moore and Brandon Braga. They'll tell you the same thing. Not about the book, but they've talked about how All Good Things should have been the movie, and it should have combined the old and the new casts, but whatever. Wouldn't that have been epic if they made... Not all Good Things, pardon me, Yesterday's Enterprise. And they did Yesterday's Enterprise as a feature film. This is what Ron Moore was talking about when they were celebrating the 30th anniversary of Yesterday's Enterprise. Instead of the Enterprise C, it was the original cast, the original crew. That would have been dope. But so Federation combines the Next Generation and the classic cast. It's so good. And it's terrific. Star Trek, it's also a great science fiction novel. And one of the things I love about Star Trek novels is that they combine the best of them combine great science fiction stories in a Star Trek context, and then they add so much backstory. Really, really great. The stuff is really great. By the way, I have to, you know what? That reminds me. I've got to read this. Let's see. I've got to find this. Let's see. I gotta find it because this article is hilarious. If you guys haven't read this, it's hilarious. Let's see. Let's. I know. Maybe I can find it because I have to read this. It just gave me so much happiness. And why can't I find this? Here it is. I've got to read this. I've got to read this article to you all because, you know what? I wasn't going to. All right, fine. I didn't write this article, but I'm going to read it to you because I take such joy in this. I take such pleasure. Star Trek Picard breaks its own Borg cube timeline. Now, if you've been on the Post-Geek Singularity Facebook page, you probably already read this, but it's so great. I'm going to read it anyway. A pivotal flashback in Star Trek Picard Episode 8 breaks the timeline of when the Romulans captured the Borg cube known as the Artifact. So Star Trek Picard has violated its own continuity. Because of course it has. The villainous Romulans play an integral role in the backstory of the Star Trek The Next Generation sequel series about the twilight years of Jean-Luc Picard. Similarly, the derelict Borg starship is crucially connected to the fate of Soji, the synthetic daughter of the late Commander Data. Even that sounds ridiculous. However, Star Trek Picard Episode 8, Broken Pieces, calls into question when exactly the Romulans took possession of the Borg cube. The mystery of how the Romulans gained control of the cube and turned it into the artifact was gradually solved throughout Star Trek Picard Season 1. At some point in the 2380s, around the time the Romulan sun went supernova, the Borg cube assimilated the Shanor, a scout ship belonging to the Zhat Vash, a secret faction of the Tal Shiar, that bears an unassuageable hatred of artificial life. Soon after the 26 Romulans aboard the Shanor were assimilated, the Borg cube suffered a submatrix collapse. The Borg was immediately severed from the Borg Collective. The cube was immediately severed from the Borg Collective, leaving thousands of Borg drones aboard in stasis. The Romulans took possession of the dormant cube and turned it into a reclamation site housing the Borg Reclamation Project, controlled by the Romulan Free State and overseen by its executive director and former Borg Q. The project reclaimed the drones and restored their original sentience while the Romulans harvested the technology for profit. However, the flashback that opens Broken Pieces, the last episode, the 8th episode, contradicts the artifact's timetable established in Star Trek Picard Episode 2, Maps and Legends. So Episode 8 contradicted Episode 2. Broken Pieces begins by showing the Zhat Vash gathered on Aya, the grief world. Why would they call it that? I mean, I know why, but 14 years ago for the ritual known as the Admonition. Under the guidance of Commodore O, who is a Romulan mole in Starfleet, the female Zhat Vash members learned the ancient truth of the Armageddon that occurred hundreds of thousands of years ago when synthetics evolved and attacked the galaxy. Yes, because they were able to see in their memories Battlestar Galactica. Among the Zhat Vash at the Admonition were Narissa and her aunt Ramda. Although Narissa maintained her sanity, the Admonition broke the minds of the other Zhat Vash, including Ramda. Broken Pieces then cuts to Picard's present of 2399, where Narissa speaks to her mentally damaged aunt, who was never entirely sane to begin with, and reveals that it was Ramda who broke the Borg cube by the sheer force of her despair. So the Borg were defeated by the sheer force of a woman's despair. What? Anyway, that's not what I want to read this. So it was Ramda's insanity that somehow caused the submatrix collapse when she was assimilated? Give me a break. Well, Broken Pieces flashback establishes that the Admonition occurred in 2385, the same year as the attack on Mars by rogue androids that led to the United Federation of Planets banning synthetic life forms, which was a plot O devised after Narissa survived the ritual. Since Ramda was at the Admonition, This means that her assimilation and subsequent capture of the Borg cube also had to happen afterwards. The problem with this is that it contradicts a sign that is clearly visible aboard the artifact in episode 2, Maps and Legends, that says this facility has gone 5,843 days without an assimilation. 5,843 days equals 16.1 years before 2399, which means that according to that sign, the Borg cube was captured in 2383, 2 years before the admonition and 2 years before Ramda's insanity could have caused the submatrix collapse. This seems like a huge error. But besides the possibility that this is merely a production oversight, the easiest in-canon explanation is either that the sign is simply in error or there's a disparity between the Romulan and Federation calendars, but otherwise the contradictory dates is a glaring flaw in Star Trek Picard's intriguingly complex story. Is it intriguingly complex? Is it? Is it really? I mean, we all know Space Legolas is still fighting in the one corridor on the Borg cube. Fighting, he's been there for weeks, fighting the same fight. I don't think he thinks this story is incredibly complex. Poor Space Legolas. After all, Star Trek Picard now says that the admonition, the Borg cube's capture, the Mars attack, then synthetics ban, and the end of the Federation's Romulan rescue mission, and Jean-Luc Picard quitting Starfleet all happened in 2385, a very eventful year, when the series could simply have set the admonition in 2383 to line up with the sign in the artifact. I just want to read that, because I'm not the only person who noticed how much gobbledygook is going on. But anyway, there you go. Oh, Stubble McShave sent in a super chat. Hang on a second. Wait. I'm back. I'm falling behind. Star Trek novels. We're back to Star Trek novels to read. Sorry. Star Trek novels. So Federation. Another one of their books, Prime Directive, which is one of my favorite Star Trek novels as well. David Mack's Destiny trilogy, which takes place after the Dominion War. Peter David's Imzadi, Q Squared, and especially Vendetta are great books to read. I was a big fan of a Star Trek novel written by Sonny Cooper early on in the Pocket Books run, Black Fire. If you haven't read the Star Trek the Motion Picture novelization, even if you don't like the movie, you've got to read the Star Trek the Motion Picture novelization because it is bonkers. If you don't want to read it, then listen to the Inglorious Trexperts episode about the novelization. It's worth listening to. So check that out. But because, again, it is, in fact, awesome. And there's so many good Star Trek novels. There's a lot of great... Sarek was a good Star Trek novel. But that's... And also... The Reeve Stevens wrote 10 Star Trek novels with William Shatner, and Shatner actually came up with the idea for a lot of them. And the first of those, the first trilogy, is really, really excellent. They actually wrote me in as a character in Captain's Blood, by the way. Thank you very much. I'm a character in a Star Trek novel, and that is canonical, in the Star Trek novels. But so read The Ashes of Eden, read The Return, and read Preserver. Those 3 books are fantastic. So I highly recommend you read those because they're great. Angel Jacoby sent in a super chat and said, Mark Bernardin joined Picard's writers. I've talked about this a lot. I think Mark Bernardin is a fantastic choice. They should probably just let him plot the entire second season. If I think it's going to be great that a real fan, look, Kirsten Beyer, who co-created Picard, clearly she knows her Star Trek. She's written some excellent Star Trek Voyager novels. I would recommend them. She's a great Star Trek novelist. I don't think a lot of her suggestions were taken to heart as much as they should have been, but that Mark Bernardin is joining is fantastic. I love that I said it before, I congratulated him when he announced it. It really gets me excited for Season 2 of Picard. And what's really great about Season 2 of Picard is it has to be better than Season 1, which is terrific. I mean, Season 1 of Picard, they keep showing us things in episodes that they shouldn't be telling us about. They should have showed it to us. Like I said, go back and look at Breaking Bad. If you're going to tell us something about Rios' backstory and it affected him to the point where he can't even look at Soji because it reminds me of tragedy, show us that. Why didn't we get to see that? Make it like they show us these frickin' they're 14 years ago. Why do they do that? I mean, I don't show us these things from the beginning. Like you know what? I could recut all of Picard. Maybe I'll do it. Maybe I'll do a fan recut. I could recut all of Picard and make it more interesting. I mean, it's just, it's frustrating. I mean, all this interesting backstory, we never see any of it. They tell us about it after the fact because, you know, they're basically shooting this show on 3 sets. The Borg Cube Corridor, the La Serena, the dumbest... You know what? The La Serena is the most uninteresting spaceship in the history of any spaceships depicted in movies. It's so boring. Terrible production design. And Picard Chateau. And a few locations shots. Crazy. But anyway, I don't want to bash on Picard because I do enough that I will limit my Picard bashing to Thursdays and Fridays. I know it's Saturday, so I won't bash on it anymore. But I think it's great that he joined the show. David sent in a tip and said, in my country, they imposed a ban on gatherings of 35 to 100 with the understanding the venue prevents sick and people in high risks from attending. Not sure I saw the option on my AMC A-list to indicate my health conditions before buying a ticket. I know. You're absolutely right. Stubble McShave says, if you don't have toilet paper, go down to the beach and pick up some seashells. You know what's so funny? The seashells thing. It's from Demolition Man. And I love how it's universal. Like, it's become ubiquitous. Everybody talks about the seashells. Maybe it was something before. For me, I just assumed it was a reference to Demolition Man, which is great because I think that's hilarious. So, yes, there's a funny gag in Demolition Man about Sylvester Stallone goes into the toilet and comes out, and there's no toilet paper there. There's just shells, and he doesn't know what they're for. And it's kind of funny. PC sent in a tip and said, not Bankhead? Laugh out loud. My bad. She's a beauty. I met you at the Spectacular. Thanks for being so nice to me. You even took an instant pic with me. How did you come up with $3.33 as a tip amount? You know what? I have to tell you, when I started with Streamlabs, I know like John Campea doesn't allow, he has tips at $5 or more, but I just left it open because I figured, I didn't want to seem like I'm some money-grubbing guy. And that was just the thing that it came up with. But I'll tell you why I left. This is so funny. Well, it's not that funny. So Tango Shalom begins in a dream sequence. And it starts out and it says, in the land of Canaan, 3,333 years ago. So I just left $3.33. I'm like, well, that must be a sign. I really didn't think it was a sign, but I just left it there. Maybe I should change the tips because, PayPal keeps thinking that I owe people things, which I don't, other than great entertainment, which I try and provide. Dancing Dog sends in a tip and says, greetings, Robert. Can you explain to the youngsters how Assignment Earth was originally a pilot? Mr. 4D man himself, Robert Lansing, would have had a cool secret agent series with Terry Garr as his co-star, Excelsior. Well, this is correct. For those of you who don't know, Dancing Dog is correct. During the second season of Star Trek, they were going to make a spin-off show from Star Trek. And frequently how that would work is they would make what's called a backdoor pilot. And a backdoor pilot is something that will happen within the regular course of the show that you're watching, but they'll introduce you to characters or a situation that they want to spin off into something else. And we've seen that through the years, like Frasier was a spin-off of Cheers. There's been lots of things like wasn't like the Jeffersons and like even Maude. I mean, there's a bunch of spin-off shows from that. Well, Star Trek was trying to do that. And in the second season, there's an episode called Assignment Earth, where the Enterprise goes back in time, uses the light speed breakaway effect, and goes back in time to find out how a certain part of a perilous part of history was survived. And during the time where they're back in time, they intercept an alien from a very mysterious, they intercept a transmission from a mysterious alien planet that they have no record of even in the future. And in this beam is a human, a man who'd been taken from Earth named Gary 7. And he is an agent for this alien intelligence that we've never seen. We don't, even in the future of Star Trek, we've never seen it. I mean, that would be a really interesting storyline to go into. And Gary 7 finds out when he goes to work that Terry Garr, the great Terry Garr, is working The agents that came before him were killed. I believe they were killed in a car wreck, if memory serves. So he's there to replace them, and he doesn't know they've been killed in a car wreck, and he meets this kind of ditzy, out of a sort of a screwball comedy character in Terry Garr. Terry Garr was Richard Dreyfuss's wife in Close Encounters. She was Dustin Hoffman's sometime girlfriend in Tootsie. I love Terry Garr. She was a great comedic presence. And they were going to make a series about Gary Seven on Earth and his adventures with his secretary, Roberta Lincoln, and their mysterious cat who may or may not transform into a woman. And they were going to do that. And it would have been a great, cool secret agent series. Now, what's really cool about that is Greg Cox, the Star Trek novelist, speaking about Star Trek novels, wrote a trilogy of Khan novels. Khan, Noonien Singh, that delves into the eugenics wars, and Gary Seven is a character. And John Byrne, the comics artist, did a series for IDW Comics about Gary Seven. And so it's cool. Stubble McShave says, I missed his tip question about movie finances. Ooh, did I? Well, let me go. Stubble McShave says, you say that movies and shows in a big part are financed by borrowed money. Is this true for a studio like Amazon as well? They surely have some deep coffers to pull from. Also, how likely is a writer's strike in our new situation? I would say right now, as far as a writer's strike goes, I would say it's probably unlikely because they have no bargaining power. The industry shut itself down. So the whole point about a writer's strike is they wanted to avoid an industry shutdown. Well, there's been an industry shutdown. So maybe they didn't need to strike. But yeah, it's that way. By the way, I didn't really get into David's question either about health conditions. I think imposing a ban was probably great, but AMC has not done anything, I'm sure, to indicate health conditions. But they did try and limit the amount of people going into movie theaters. Like they sell half the amount of tickets. But I don't even think that. People are still going to the movies because they need something to do. But yeah. So that's where was I? I'm discombobulated. So there you go. That's where Gary and Robert Lansing was in a movie called 4D Man. That's what Dancing Dog is referring to. So there you go with that. Sorry about missing your tip, Stubble. Tom from Allagash. How is the beer tasting? All right, first of all, let me talk about Allagash beer for a minute. Tom reached out to me. As you can see, my water glass that I drink from is Allagash. It's from Allagash Brewing. I love Allagash beer. And Tom from Allagash sent me a care package of all of these unbelievable... I did not know... So Allagash Brewing is from back east. I think it's in Maine, right, Tom? I think it's in Maine. Allagash makes Allagash White, which is one of my favorite beers. And he saw me. I just randomly started talking about Allagash beer, and he sent me a bunch of Allagash swag. There's a metal Allagash beer thing over there that you put in a bar. So he sent me. I didn't know Allagash made all of these but micro batches of stuff. And they're amazing. By the way, Tom, they're all gone now. I've drank everything. And I'm a huge fan of, Tom, if there's any new things you want to send my way, I'm happy to accept. But Allagash Brewing, their beers are great. I love all their beers. And the stuff, they made sour beer, which I didn't know. They made a lot of stouts. It was great. And Allagash beer is actually expensive. It comes in a 4-pack, not a 6-pack. And I always get it I love it on tap. So the beer is tasting great, Tom. I'm out of it, though. That's why I'm drinking, sadly, water out of this Allagash glass. But this, by the way, Allagash did not pay me to say this. And Tom, while he did send me a unbelievably generous box, a huge box of their beer, they didn't pay me to talk about it. I was pontificating. I have no problem. I would love to have sponsors for this channel, but I have no problem talking about things that I love. I love Allagash beer. I make no bones about it. It's a fine beer, or as I like to say, a nice drop. I don't know. I heard nice drop in Australia. As far as alcohol is concerned, a nice drop. I like that. I like calling things a nice drop. You know what? Dancing Dog sends in another tip and says, one of my favorite Lost in Space episodes is one called The Challenge. It features a young Kurt Russell as a warrior boy, and his father is played by the amazing Mike Lanzara. It's such a wonderful episode. I feel as though Lost in Space is underrated. Do you think it's underrated? Really? Even as a kid, I couldn't. Now, by the way, I do not want to yuck your yum. If you love Lost in Space, you should. But even as a kid, I kind of didn't like it that much. But yes, Mike Lanzara. Mike Lanzara, for those of you who don't know, played Kang in the Star Trek third season episode Day of the Dove. He also played... Wait, can I see it from here? Can I get it from here? Oh no, I can't reach it. He also played John Singing Rock in the Manitou. He was in a lot of other things, but I've got my original Manitou paperbacks over there. I don't have the original release of the Manitou. I've always wanted to get the original paperback of Graham Masterton's The Manitou, but I have the movie release version. But I do have Revenge of the Manitou and the third book, Burial, right over there. Revenge of the Manitou is a book I ordered from Island Books. It was great. Anyway, Thomas says, Tom, how do you pronounce your last name? Pitzrak? I can't say it. Working from home now, more time for live chats. Well, that's good, Thomas. Thanks for contributing to the channel. And I hope you're still working for Allagash. And Tom says, a favorite underrated movie is Thank You for Smoking. I like Thank You for Smoking, and you're right. It is underrated. Mike Castro, Journey's End, sent a tip and said, I'm writing a Galaxy Quest 2 spec that mirrors the state of Trek and the current state of geekdom becoming commercialized and dumbed down for the masses, where the younger reboot crew are abducted and they need to be rescued by the old crew. Shatner saving Pine. That's a great idea. For those of you who haven't seen the fandom-produced Galaxy Quest documentary, you've got to watch it. It's really, really good. It's streaming. I don't know where it's streaming. Watch the Galaxy Quest documentary because it's great. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I've got tons of letters, and I apologize that I haven't read. I have a ton of letters, and I'm just going to, you know what, there's a lot, so I'm going to start reading your letters. As a matter of fact, hang on a second. Hold on a minute. Let's see, do I have them? I had the letters. I had them up here somewhere. Yes, I do. I'm going to read this letter. Let me put it on. Let me put it on the screen. This letter. Oh, wait, that's not the letter. That's not the letter, ladies and gentlemen. Not the letter. Did I miss it? Did I blow the letter thing out? Here it is. Here's a letter, ladies and gentlemen. This letter comes from Jack Gregus. Jack Gregus. Thoughts about the virus in 2020. I'm at a red. People are panicking, and it's entertaining in a way, like you can't keep your eyes off a car accident. So much reporting and cancellations of things some people care about. Eyes are being shared in worry. The virus can affect and change the life of almost anybody. It's personal. All of a sudden, it's personal. All of a sudden, they go into a craze. This thing favors the rich and poor alike. They see only what can determine their death after brushing it off. It didn't last. It's close, and they aren't who they want to be, and they haven't accomplished unoriginal dreams. The majority of humankind is in cabin fever. This thing is spread like wildfire. Now people take notice. Now they fear for what may come. If they'll die, and then what? Questions cut through the armor of mortal man. There's no vaccines. There's just cases piling and piling just because. The world watches when it serves them. Their little soirees of privilege cannot comfort them when the thing is circling. Everyone can't repent at the 25th hour. That's a pretty good movie, by the way. They can't force change because they want to suit their selfish, ever-evident core. Godless will remain godless. They haven't taken the time to think. They haven't taken the time to live for all humankind. The crimes upon and slavery of children didn't come across when donating to animal commercials tugged their lukewarm hearts. Lazy, and now they want to live, again to remain indifferent. They think for themselves and serve themselves, and now it's personal all of a sudden. All of a fucking sudden they are slapped in the face of seeing suffering. This suffering that has no injustice, only sad casualties. What will be at an end will once again fright. The apocalypse is a thief in the night. Well, Jack, I want to thank you for that. That's outstanding. So, yeah. I do want to thank you. Let's go down and read another one. Let's see. This one comes from Alan G. Alan G says, Dear Rob, it's been a real pleasure to discover your channel. As someone whose favorite part of Star Trek and Star Wars has always been the worlds, lately I felt like a man without a country. But your way of analyzing stories and pop culture really speaks to me. Today, I'm writing about the latest piece of entertainment observation that is stuck in my craw. Have you noticed that a lot of modern corporate storytellers are simply unable to effectively build and capitalize on tension? Yes. Let me explain. This afternoon, while I was home at lunch, I started up this week's Star Trek Picard, and within 8 minutes, we'd cut to Space Legolas, Ronnie Elfman hiding from pursuing Romulan attackers. It looks like he was all was lost for our hero when at the last second out trots 7 of 9, who seemingly from the blue appears and saves him. Now that's not entirely fair because there's a line of dialogue in the last episode where Hugh said he was signaling the Fenris Rangers. It was a blink and you miss it drop that he muttered during an action scene. Nonetheless, on paper, they did set it up. They just set it up in a lame and perfunctory way. In the old days, maybe Seven and Hugh exchanged some lines of dialogue by voice comms, or maybe this episode would open with a scene of Seven receiving the transmission. Bonus points if she has some sort of reaction that shows an internal conflict of some kind. At the very least, include the line from Hugh in their previously on Star Trek Picard breakdown, but not today. I get that the intent was to surprise audiences. They hope you forget that Hugh made the comment. Maybe you didn't even register who he was talking about, and then you see 7 of 9 and go, aha! But when you weigh in the effectiveness of that aha moment against the tension of knowing that she's on her way, but not knowing if she'll get there in time, I don't think it's a competition. The writers time and again conflate the exciting part with the moment where X steps in and blows Y away with a gun. That is not the exciting part. The exciting part is the build-up. The exciting part is Starbuck walking down the hall of the Pegasus to CIC, handling her pistol and sweating bullets because she knows that in a few moments she's going to be asked to murder someone. It's the standoff before the gunfight. Once the guns go off, it gets old fast. In his preface to the uncut edition of The Stand, Stephen King was trying to justify restoring an extra 400 words to his manuscript and said, if all the story is there, one might ask, then why bother? Isn't it indulgence after all? It better not be. If it is, then I have spent a large portion of my life wasting my time. As it happens, I think that in really good stories, the whole is always greater than the sum of the parts. When I watch Picard, I see a bunch of scenes that are just slapped together into a narrative. Man, you said it. They might check all the boxes, but they don't make a cohesive whole. Good ideas fall apart due to inept execution. A good writer can make a scene where 2 characters talk riveting. But in Picard, it's just one milquetoast exposition scene after another. They can make an interesting setup if they lean on mystery, but once they're asked to execute on the mystery, things turn lifeless and boring. Compare that to the slow boil way tension escalates in shows like Better Call Saul, The Outsider, and Turn, America's Spies. It used to keep the audience hooked while teaching us things about the characters. I don't get that from Picard. I didn't get it from The Rise of Skywalker or Discovery either. It feels like these shows were written by kids in college who've never written anything in their lives. Why is this so? Alan. Alan, I ask myself this question every single day. Every Thursday for 8 weeks, I have asked myself this question, why? How do they not know? How do they sit in the edit bay? How do they put these, obviously, as we know, by the time they got to episode 7, none of it was working, so they had to do reshoots and try and fix their own ridiculous story. These scripts should have been tightly wound clocks. That all of them were finished before they started shooting. The fact that after 7 episodes, they didn't know where they were and they had to go do reshoots. Picard is a terribly produced show, and it has no figurehead. It's switched showrunners, and Michael Chabon is not a television showrunner, and clearly he's not much of a, I hate to say it, he's not much of a TV writer either. The fact that you have Pulitzer Prize winners, I mean, Chabon's won a Pulitzer, or Pulitzer, has won a Pulitzer, has won a Nebula, and has won a Hugo. There is no excuse for the kind of storytelling that's going on in Picard. None. And hey, if you like it, that's fine. There's a lot. Look, I like all the stuff that's in it, but like you just pointed out, Alan, it's horribly put together. Ugh, it drives me crazy. I mean, I could have spent with a few friends of mine, I would have handpicked, say, 5 writers that I know who are great genre writers. They're great genre writers. I would have got them and we would have sat in a room with these scripts, and if they gave us one 8-hour session, we would have fixed them all. But no. Anyway, this next letter comes from James Kevins. James Kevins. Hi, Rob. With all the confusion coming at us about artificial intelligence and synthetics in Star Trek Picard, I'm reminded of a story concept I read many years ago. Do you remember an old Gene Roddenberry pilot called The Quester Tapes? I do. It starred Robert Foxworth and Mike Farrell. It had to do with an android named Quester that was designed by an eccentric scientist that disappeared before Quester was finished. When Quester is assembled, he escapes the U.S. Army and tries to find his creator. He's joined on this mission by the engineer who assembled him. In the final scenes, it is explained that Quester's creator is also an android. Centuries ago, an alien race saw potential in the human race, so they placed a Quester android among us, not to control humanity, but instead to guide us toward enlightenment. Every generation has had a Quester android designed by the previous android. Now, on Next Generation, we have Data, an android designed by an eccentric scientist who then disappears. So the question was, is Data the Quester android of the 24th century? It seems unlikely, given what we have been told about Noonien Sung, but I still think it would be an elegant tie-in with a previous pilot of The Great Bird of the Galaxies. What is your take on this? Jim Kevins. What a great letter, Jim. Yes, Gene Roddenberry did write the Quester tapes, or did make the Quester tapes. You can watch it. And I'm sure, look, these ideas, whether it was Earth 2, whether it was the Quester tapes, Gene Roddenberry had these ideas, and I think absolutely Quester is related, at least in Gene Roddenberry's mind, to, in fact, Quester. Data and Quester, absolutely the same. I don't think it would have been the same kind of thing, but it was definitely part of that thinking, 100%. And I totally agree with you. And it's always cool to talk about. Man, I haven't thought about the Quester tapes. I haven't seen the Quester tapes in a long time. I should track that down. Uh-oh. This letter comes from Brian Eng. Brian Eng says he always throws these ethical conundrums at me. Rob, you seem to be a huge proponent of free speech. Do you support unfettered free speech? Our government doesn't protect what they consider to be obscene speech. Do you think this is a slippery slope? Some European countries consider Holocaust denial to be illegal speech. Do you condemn this concept? Good question, Brian. As you always do, ask good questions. This is why we have the best community. You imagination connoisseurs, you're totally the best community on the World Wide Web, and I thank you for it. Look, I believe in free speech, 100%. I also believe in the well-being of our society, the body politic, whatever you want to call it. I also believe in civility and politeness. I also believe in not being an asshole. Now, Holocaust denying is so stupid. I'll tell you why it's stupid. Because the Germans do a very good job of keeping records of everything that they did. And you can find out, it's not like this is a conspiracy. It's not like we're reading the book Fatherland, where the Holocaust was suppressed because the Germans won World War II. The Germans were meticulous about what happened with everybody. So it's not like whether they're, and you can go visit the places this happened. You can read where all these people went to. Thank you to German efficiency. So Holocaust denying is stupid and it's wrong. And I do believe in the spreading misinformation of any kind is inane. And look, there's a lot of hatred out there. As I've frequently called myself a stealth Jew growing up because I was adopted. I did find out my biological mother was in fact Jewish, but I was adopted into I was adopted into a Jewish family. So I was raised Jewish. I learned Hebrew. I was bar mitzvahed. I don't remember much Hebrew, but I did go to Sunday school, and then it became Tuesday school as well. I had to go twice a week to religion school. So I was raised in the faith. My family did. My grandfather's last name was Schoenfeld. The Schoenfeld Gardner Foundation did build a synagogue at Temple D. Hirsch, which is a Jewish reform temple, Temple D. Hirsch, and that's where I went to school. And it's reform. Reform Judaism is kind of like easy Judaism. It's like if I don't know what you call it. It's like an easy listening station. If you're going to listen to like Slayer, if Slayer is Orthodox Judaism, Reform Judaism is like the band Bread. Boy, I don't know where that came from, but I think that we live in a society. You have to have free speech, but also you shouldn't allow people to just willy-nilly say offensive shit for saying offensive shit. You can't prevent it, but I do think that we need to start thinking about the fact that as human beings we have an obligation not just to ourselves, not just to each other, but to the planet that we live on. We have to be custodians of all of this, and I think that, look, the more travel, the more people that you meet around the world, and I haven't traveled as extensively as I would have liked. I've never been to India, for instance. I've never been to Japan. I'm scared to go to Japan, not because I wouldn't want to be there. I would probably want to spend the rest of my life in Japan if I went there, because not only are there Japanese girls there, which is all good, but there's a lot of die-cast super robots I would have to buy. There's Gundam robots. I would go broke. I wouldn't eat. I'd go into all those toy stores that they have there. I mean, all the electronics, all the home theater equipment. I can't go to Japan unless I'm independently worth millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars. But that's an aside. And by the way, if I went to Japan, I'd have to hang out with Lynn Hobday, one of our expat Brits, who's a member of the Post-Geek Singularity, because she's a singer. So she's probably, knows how to get into a lot of venues. I mean, she'd be able to take me around. We'd spend all night. We'd go out and do pub crawls every night, and then I'd watch her perform. And so I'd need even more money, because I'd want to buy drinks for everybody. I'd be the loud, boisterous American. I'm sure they'd love me over there. Or maybe they'd call me a worthless gaijin like they called Michael Douglas in Black Rain. But we got to travel. People are good. One of the things that I've learned traveling around the world is that no matter where you go, yeah, there's assholes everywhere. But for the most part, I've found that people are pretty great. And I think, free speech is I think it's really important. I think the free flow of ideas should not be curtailed. But, those ideas also have to be, I think, productive. Do I want to limit hate speech? I would prefer it if people didn't use hate speech. Maybe that's wishful thinking on my part. But I think free speech must be protected, even if we don't want to hear it. Even if we don't want to hear it. In a nutshell. But, I mean, I think Holocaust denial, the problem that I have with Holocaust denial, aside from the fact that people who are denying it are usually anti-Semitic fucks that hate Jews for no reason at all, which I don't understand. And by the way, if there is the Zionist-occupied government, the one world government, I want my check. I'm part of the tribe. Would somebody put me on that payroll? I would love to join the conspiracy. Let me join the Jewish conspiracy to take over the world. I want to join it. Buy me stuff. Send me checks. I will espouse your ideology. Please. So for Zog, for the elders of the protocols of Zion, if all of that is true, I want to know, why am I not part of it? Why have I not been conscripted for the Zionist-occupied government? Make me a part of it. No, the reason I think Holocaust denial is dumb and why it shouldn't necessarily... Free speech is fine, but I don't think putting out false information, not only is it anti-Semitic, but it's also wrong. And while, yeah, I mean, who is, it's factually wrong. It's demonstrably wrong. It's demonstrably wrong. So I do condemn it. I do condemn Holocaust denial because those fuckers are wrong. And it wasn't just 6 million Jews that lost their lives. It was 12 million people were exterminated in concentration camps. LGBTQ people, gypsies. I mean, eventually the Nazis would have gotten rid of just about everyone Can you imagine if the Axis powers had won World War II, like in Man in the High Castle? Like, what would the Germans have done when Japan and Germany came to loggerheads? What was going to happen there? Yes, so I condemn it, but yeah, I think it's stupid. I think Holocaust denial is stupid. But free speech, we need to have free speech. We need to protect free speech. We do. And you know what I think? Holocaust denial, it also exposes the assholes, and that's always good too. Ladies and gentlemen, guess who I have a letter from? Dun, dun, dun. Willow Yang, ladies and gentlemen. The great Willow Yang. A woman, I don't think I've wanted to sit down and break bread with a woman as much in my life as I want to sit down with Willow Yang and get her rip-roaring drunk to talk about sweaty man-on-man sex and who she's shipping and what Star Trek is her favorite. I mean, and her mom. Willow Yang would be a delight to hang out with. I got to hang out with Willow Yang. I haven't read a Willow Yang letter in a while. This is a Willow Yang letter. I don't even know what it's about. I have not read this letter. I'm just going to read it cold. The great Willow Yang, you can read her letters on the Willow Talk section of the Burnettwork.net website. That is a plug. By the way, if you like Willow's letters, hit like on this video. Hit like on this video. Slap like now, as Davey504 says. So take it away, Willow. Dear Rob, I've been thinking about the subject of ageism in modern movies that someone raised a while back. I'm not convinced that it's necessarily a reflection of societal attitudes toward the older generation when movies tend to feature younger characters. The Chinese are a culture that's generally known for revering our elders and adhering to a lot of traditional values. However, one thing that I've constantly heard from my parents when they're watching movies is that they're always judging the appearance of the actors in them. They don't like films with actors whom they think are too old or unattractive. They enjoy seeing beautiful young people on the screen. The movie stars like Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio, although both are actually also too old now for their liking. Moreover, I'm not convinced that we are necessarily shunning older actors in films right now. The current big blockbusters are superhero movies and other action movie franchises, and I do think that such genres should naturally skew more towards younger actors. You generally can't have someone in their 70s and 80s running around doing crazy stunts without sacrificing some verisimilitude in the process. When launching a franchise, it's necessary to cast younger people if you want them to be in the role for 10 plus years. Moreover, there are still many popular action films today that star older actors. Even though he doesn't look it, Tom Cruise is approaching 60 and still hanging from the sides of planes in the Mission Impossible movies. Similarly, Keanu Reeves is still doing some kick-ass gun fu with his John Wick franchise. Daniel Craig will be in his 50s upon the release of his presumably last Bond film, making him older than Pierce Brosnan, George Lazenby, and Timothy Dalton in their last appearances as Bond. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention your favorite Fast and the Furious franchise, headlined by Vin Diesel, and hopefully now with the triumphant return of Sung Kang. Yes! Even comic book movies have featured older actors in leading roles. I personally loved what the failed DCEU attempted to do with the older, grizzled Ben Affleck Batman. I just wish that the character had been put in better movies. I think so does Ben Affleck. Although that's a killer. The Justice League hot toy figure is a killer. Hugh Jackman was around 50, starring alongside a 70-plus-year-old Patrick Stewart when Logan came out. Robert Downey Jr., who was one of the most important characters out of the ensemble that was Avengers Endgame, was also past 50 when the movie was released. In regards to Star Wars, I acknowledge first and foremost that I'm certainly not an expert on the franchise. I know very little about the expanded universe. However, all 6 of the previous saga films have been centered on young people. The hero of the original trilogy was Luke, who started out as a somewhat annoying teenager. The main character of the prequels was Anakin, who started out as a very annoying kid. Should the sequel trilogy have been about the older Han, Luke, and Leia in the next phase of their lives? Probably. But Star Wars didn't go from being a story about adults to one about kids. The previous 2 trilogies were both, to some extent, what is this word? Bildungsromans? I've never seen this word before. I have to look that up. Hang on a second. I got to find it. Willow, you've stumped me here. I do not know this word. But that's what Google is for. You know, when you come across a word you don't know, you just punch it right in. And what does it say? Bildungsroman, a novel dealing with one's personal formative years or spiritual education. Bildungsroman. I've never heard this word in my life. Wow. Is Harry Potter a Bildungsroman? Well, you know what, Willow? Thank you. The word of the day is Bildungsromans. Wow. Okay. Going outside of the big blockbusters to the more prestigious films, let's just take a look at the list of movies last year that were nominated for Best Picture. The winner, Parasite, was an ensemble film that included several middle-aged characters in major roles. Ford v. Ferrari starred 2 adult men, as did Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. As for The Irishman, my parents actually couldn't get through the movie because they were complaining that the leads were all too old to be playing middle-aged men, since no amount of makeup and digital effects could de-age their bodies and make their movements less stiff. Why doesn't the director give more opportunity to younger actors, was what they said. The leads in Marriage Story weren't middle-aged, but I wouldn't consider them to be young people either. I don't know what Arthur Fleck Joker's actual age was, but Joaquin Phoenix is in his 40s, and they made no attempt to make his character look younger in the movie. The only nominees that really starred young people were Jojo Rabbit, which is certainly not a typical kids film, 1917, also not a typical kids film, and Little Women, a classic literary adaptation. There weren't any young people being nominated for Best Lead Actor or Supporting Actor either. Indeed, with the latter category, 3 of the 5 nominees were legally seniors. Anthony Hopkins at 82, Al Pacino at 79, and Joe Pesci at 77. Now, I'm certainly not saying that ageism isn't a problem. However, I do think we still have an abundance of films, both big blockbusters and more prestigious features, in our modern era that star older actors. I will say that there is one area of Hollywood where I have noticed ageism in the past, and that's with actresses. The Feud TV series addressed the issue, with the aging Bette Davis and Joan Crawford struggling to find roles during the classic Hollywood era. A lot of movies may have older actors in the lead, or an older actor in the lead, but still pair him with an attractive, considerably younger actress. However, I do think that is actually improving in our current day. We've seen stars like Jamie Lee Curtis and Linda Hamilton come back to Halloween and Terminator. The latter movie might have bombed at the box office, but it's still nice seeing older actresses engaging in action roles when we've got people like Sylvester Stallone, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and Bruce Willis still kicking ass in their 60s and 70s. Actresses like Judi Dench, Helen Mirren, and Meryl Streep still appear to be very much in demand. And in the end, I'm all for older people getting more serious or getting more roles because, unlike my parents, I do like seeing a diversity of people on screen. Even though I don't think it was a great movie, I was delighted by the premise of The Good Liar last year because I haven't seen many crime thrillers involving 2 older characters. This was new and exciting. I just wish they could have gone all the way with the movie and made it a full-on erotic thriller with some steamy sex scenes between Sir Ian McKellen and Dame Helen Mirren. Once again, Willow does not disappoint. Man, I'd like to jump into your fantasies for a while. I wonder when we get those devices like a Brainstorm machine. If you haven't ever seen movie Brainstorm that Douglas Trumbull directed from 1983 with Louise Fletcher and Christopher Walken and Natalie Wood, it was her last film, check out Brainstorm. But I'll tell you, man, I want to hook up one of those Brainstorm machines to your head, Willow, just so I can play back and be a part of those fantasies of yours. Older people have more experience and knowledge about life that we can all still learn from, and I'm sure that includes lovemaking as well. Well, I have to tell you, Willow, when I was 22 years old, I dated a 40-year-old woman, and I dated a 30-year-old woman and then a 42-year-old woman, and my world was rocked, let me tell you. I learned a great deal about things from those women, and you are correct. Yes, I agree with you. What a great letter. Best regards, Willow. Again, Willow's letters are up on Willow Talk on the Burnettwork.net website, which you can check out. I agree with you. I am a huge fan of older actors. As a kid, I never particularly enjoyed watching movies about other kids. When I was really young, I did enjoy like the Disney live action movies like Candle Shoe that starred Jodie Foster. I did like movies like that because it wasn't a kid's movie about kid things necessarily. But I've always loved older actors, and I think we're really seeing, Jane Fonda is in her 80s, and come on. She is a dish. Like you said, imagine what she knows. Who would have thought that Barbarella would have spanned 50 years, 60 years of time, and you can still look at Jane Fonda, and I mean this with no disrespect, Jane, but I'd hit that. I'm telling you, Jane Fonda at 80, she is looking mighty fine, and you're absolutely right. I think in our civilization, there's nothing, youth is youth. But as people get older, I've always found, like, I think Charlotte Rampling, who is playing Mother Mohiam, I can't wait to hear how they pronounce that in the movie. But in Dune, I mean, I've loved Charlotte Rampling since The Night Porter. Willow, there's a movie for you to check out. Whoo, The Night Porter. Nazis, and lovemaking. Check out The Night Porter. Charlotte Rampling, again, a woman that's been hot for 50 years, is still hot. Don't anyone tell me that if you were offered a date, I know she's married to Taylor Hackford, but don't tell me you wouldn't want to go out on a date. You know what kind of a date I mean, with Helen Mirren. Come on. Speaking of which, Judi Dench too. I mean, I think it's changing. Our civilization is changing. What's really interesting is we're watching now. Meryl Streep was in movies in the 70s. She was in Manhattan. She was in Deer Hunter in the 70s. Meryl Streep is someone who has only grown, and for 50 years she's been a dish. So we've seen women. I love seeing, older men have always been, like you said, have gotten away with it. But we're now seeing women who are aging gracefully and remain beautiful and remain sexy. And I think it's great. Renee Russo is another actress. And I think it's terrific. And I think we're going to see more and more of that. And I think it's only a good thing. But yeah, as women as older women are also being portrayed as being sexy, I don't understand why they it's bizarre. That book club, when they were reading 50 Shades of Grey, the book club movie. Mary Steenburgen, come on. I've had a crush on her since time after time. What was that, 1979? So, yeah, it's nice to see older actresses getting their due. And older actresses who have sex appeal. Because, oh, yeah, they certainly do. Great letter, Willow. Thank you for sending that in. Let me jump back to... Let me jump back to your chats. Let's see where we're at here. Let's see. PC sends in a tip and says, Allagash is so good. Are you on Untapped? I'm not on Untapped. Emma, what is that? I don't know what that is. Are you on Untapped? Happy Pie Day. Beer and pizza is the best combo. They're at Lucky Baldwin's, which is the Trappist pub down the street that I walk to with the dogs because they make chicken for the dogs to eat. It's having this untapping of this amazing beer. It's probably gone by now, but I got to go down there and check it out. Mukbang Reviews sends in a super chat and says, did you read Go-Go Girls of the Apocalypse, a novel? We are close. Coffee and beer will be like money. Yeah, they will. That's the thing people should really hoard. Chocolate, coffee, beer, whiskey. I have not read Go-Go Girls of the Apocalypse, but it sounds right up my alleyway. Jamie Cruz sends in a $2 super chat and says, Felix is about to hammer that ant behind you. Is there an ant behind me? Felix? I don't know what that means. Behind me? I don't know. I don't know what that means. I know that George Lazenby's behind me. Well, that wasn't good. How did I just make my dashboard disappear? Not good. My dashboard disappeared. I don't know what that means, Jamie Cruz. Hassan sends in a tip and says, I liked whining about movies. Well, thank you, Hassan. Hassan, you called it, by the way. Hassan Chavez picked up on the fact that I had said that it was going to be I was on Criterion, and he sent in a list, and the first thing on his list was, in fact, Videodrome. So Hassan Chavez called it, longtime member of the Post-Geek Singularity community. Hassan, you're right. I'm not giving you any more hints, but I do think perhaps our Monday movie might also be on Criterion. There's a hint. Go figure it out. I liked whining and movies. Have you seen The Greasy Strangler? I have seen The Greasy Strangler. It is a cult movie. Did I like it? I didn't like it very much. I wanted to like it. It was kind of a throwback, and it was gross and offensive, and it just, I don't know. It seemed like they were trying too hard. You could discuss that movie with Elizabeth. What are you going to see next? If they ever remake Back to the Future, will it be about a millennial who goes back in time to cancel the past? That would be really interesting. Is if you if you had some social justice warrior type who had a time machine and was going back to prevent something from happening. Maybe going back to prevent free speech. The First Amendment from being written. Or something. Mark C. sends in a super chat and says, I find less ageism in Hollywood today due to the hiring in Hollywood. The industry seems to be hiring grown boys and girls instead of men and women. I don't know. I think Hollywood's always hired grown boys and girls instead of men and women. But I know what you mean. I mean, I think people, and maybe I can't get over this. I think that when I look into the past, people looked older in movies. Like Brad Pitt, even though he's in his 50s, and Tom Cruise, they look younger. But if you look at the matinee idols of the past, like Cary Grant or Gary Cooper or Humphrey Bogart, they always seemed, Jimmy Stewart, they always seemed older to me. People in older movies seemed older. And I imbued them in my mind that made them inherently more smarter. They were smarter because of it. I don't know. Felix on the cover of Armor. Oh, yes. That's what you're talking about. For those of you who don't know, this is the John Stakely Gruesome Twosome Vampires, which John Carpenter adapted. And boy, while a lot of John Carpenter's movies have been remade, this book needs to be shot the way somebody could readapt this book, give it a much bigger budget, and it would be epic. This is his other book, Armor, which is kind of a riff on Starship Troopers. I didn't know what you were saying. I forgot the character's name, Felix. Both of these books are incredible books. If you want to read some great stuff, these books. Yeah. There you go. So get those books and read them. I don't know, Mark. I mean, because when I was working at Warner Brothers, the executives that they were hiring were young. They were young. I mean, I was there with like Bob Brassel was there, Courtney Valenti was there, and they were young. Tom LaSalle was there. Lorenzo de Bonaventura started at Warner Brothers as an executive when I was there, and they were young. So Dancing Dog sends in a tip and says, Robert, both Wes Craven and Rocky director John Avildsen started their careers making porno movies. Do you think porno directors today would be able to make the jump to mainstream movies as those gentlemen did back in the 70s? Well, Gregory Dark tried to do that. I was a big fan of what the Dark brothers did with Pornography, and they directed music videos, and they tried to jump across. I have a friend that I've known for a while. His name is Adrian Stewart. His name isn't Adrian Stewart. It's a nom de plume. But I have a friend that works in the industry, and who's, by the way, if you're a fan of like science fiction and porn, you can't go wrong with his movies. Willow and Vesna and Paula. He made a movie. If a pornographic movie could be epic, he made a movie called Upload. It's got digital effects. It's got an X-Files vibe to it, but it has some of the best as far as pornographic sex scenes go. He directs some wicked pornography. Eli Cross is his name. And if you find an Eli Cross movie, watch it. He helped work on Star Wars XXX. That's how I was able to I didn't star. I played Biggs Darklighter in Star Wars XXX. I was a non-sex performer in the movie. But yeah, I think it's hard. I think there's a huge prejudice against porn directors in the industry. Also now, because porn has become so ubiquitous that it's hard to imagine that somebody who works in porn could make the jump. But Eli Cross could. And, there's a movie, Richard Hatch's last movie, Diminuendo, which is an interesting movie about AI and the same themes that are repeated. And it's a different take on it, but you can watch it on Amazon, Diminuendo. Check that out. So yeah, check that out. But yeah, and Francis Coppola too. Francis Coppola started out, and I directed softcore. Femme Fatales was a softcore show. I directed 5 episodes of that, and it was interesting. I mean, when you're doing that, it depends. I mean, there's all kinds of different kinds of pornography. and how you're going to do it. Like, I was a big fan of Zalman King, who created Red Shoe Diaries. He made some great soft core, but I think what's really missing now, a genre, we didn't get it as like with 50 Shades of Grey. I would love to see a really great erotic thriller in the vein of whether it's Basic Instinct or Body Heat or The Last Seduction. Or I would love to see movies that dealt with real eroticism, and I think we're missing that. And there was like movies like Strip to Kill that you would watch on late night cable. We're totally missing that, and I don't know. Like, I wonder, when you're growing up, I used to love erotic thrillers when I was a teenager. I love movies, Zalman King's movies. Red Shoe Diaries, the show was fun, but I liked Two Moon Junction, erotic thriller with Sherilyn Fenn. I love that. Watching Sherilyn Fenn and Richard Tyson. It wasn't really a thriller. It was more of a romance, a Southern fried romance. But I miss that. I would love to actually make an erotic thriller. And what was interesting when we were doing, I'll tell you as an aside. So when I was directing Femme Fatale's episodes, Mark Altman and Steve Krazier, who created the show, they had the directors, it was their mandate that the directors would call the actors and actresses and talk about what was expected of them. So I would have to call the actors before we did a sex scene and explain exactly what it was I wanted them to be doing, and how I was going to shoot the scenes so they would feel comfortable. And the problem is when you're doing that, when it comes down to depicting, it ultimately is not, you can't, the sex that they would allow us to show is not that interesting. And there are things you just like can't touch, areas that you can't go in terms of how you're depicting sexuality. And I think we're limited. Like, I would like to make not an X-rated erotic thriller, because the problem with the problem with eroticism in film is that it really does stop the plot cold. And unless the way that the sex is being portrayed, like in Basic Instinct, the sex scenes between Michael Douglas and Sharon Stone, you wonder, is she going to kill him? Like, what's going to happen? And that becomes suspenseful. And now that we've got, porn is everywhere, you can just log into Pornhub or RedTube and watch whatever you want. I don't know if people dig erotic thrillers, but I miss that. I don't even know why I was talking about. Oh, we're talking about porn. Yeah, and directing porn was really interesting. Like, I don't know, directing softcore at least was interesting, but it was unsatisfying because you could only keep it. Like, if I could have told my actors what I really wanted to see them do, I couldn't have done it. But I think there's nothing wrong with that. I think now there's much more of a prejudice than there might have been, because low budget filmmaking all around back in the 60s and 70s was different. And I still like going back. There's a director named Radley Metzger, who I've talked about before. He made movies like The Licorice Quartet and The Image, softcore Euro stuff. And it's not that softcore. It borders, there's some hardcore moments. But I loved his softcore movies. Camille 2000, The Licorice Quartet, I think, is actually a very, very good movie. But then he went from erotic films to full on hardcore. He changed his name to Henry Paris and started directing movies like The Afternoons of Pamela Mann and Barbara Broad. I think he directed Barbara Broadcast. Did he direct Barbara Broadcast? Anyway, it was a different time. But yeah. So Doug Tarnovian says, is that an Anton Chigurh figure? Anton Chigurh from Javier Bardem from No Country for Old Men. It is indeed a figure. Now this is a third party. It's a third party figure, so it's a figure. It's totally unlicensed, and I have to fix. The wire came out of the compressed air can. But yes, I love getting figures that no company would really license and make, but here's the figure from No Country for Old Men. because I collect, I collect all kinds of 6-scale figures, mostly Hot Toys. But when I find third-party figures that they don't make, and this is pretty good. I mean, the clothing is pretty good. I mean, I love to get that. I love to get these figures. Like I slept on the Enter Bay. No, it's not Blitzway. Blitzway did a 2-pack of Tyler Durden from Fight Club, and now it's like $700 for the 2-pack. I was dumb to sleep on that. I have their Ghostbusters figures, but I slept on the I got that Brad Pitt there. But it's not very good. PC says Untapped is an app to keep track of your beers. PC sends in a tip. I love Lucky Baldwin's. If you do join Untapped, add me. Everybody should add PC. He's at PVC213. If I ever see you at Lucky's, I'll buy you a few beers. I love that you'll buy me a few beers. I might head there this afternoon after this chat. What do you say? Dancing Dog 60 sends in a tip and says, I love the film Forbidden Planet. And I also love Raquel Welch in Fantastic Voyage. I would love to see these movies remade. They were trying to remake Forbidden Planet and Fantastic Voyage. Both of those films, like at one point, I think Irvin Kershner was going to direct the Fantastic Forbidden Planet remake. I want to make Fantastic Planet as a live action movie, but Forbidden Planet's one of my favorites. I love Fantastic Voyage as well, and I agree with you. Great stuff. Great stuff. I would love to see them remade. If you guys haven't seen either Forbidden Planet or Fantastic Voyage, you should watch them because they're great. Mukbang Reviews sends in a super chat and says, have Liz back. She was great. Show us the toys boxed or not, and don't ask her to speak French after the third no, laugh out loud. You're persistent, if nothing else. Yes, as people know that my girlfriend Elizabeth, she speaks fluent French. Her mother is French. They speak French all the time, and she refused to speak French last night. I listen to it. She speaks it all the time with her mom. Like they're fluent. And she wouldn't speak French. Like, why? I don't know. I know I shouldn't pressure like that. Joseph the Betrayed sends in a tip and says, do you think it's a missed opportunity to have Admiral Janeway instead of Admiral Clancy opposite Picard? Yeah, I actually did. I mean, I know. Look, Anne Magnuson, who is playing Admiral Clancy, I love Anne Magnuson. You might ask who Anne Magnuson is. Anne Magnuson is kind of a performance artist. She's an actress. She's a singer. But she has had a very interesting film career. She shows up, for all of you friends of The Hunger, she shows up as one half of the couple that David Bowie and Catherine Deneuve pick up in the punk club that is watching Bauhaus play at the beginning of the movie and take home, and they think they're going to have a four-way, and they're not. They die. So Anne Magnuson is the redhead in The Hunger. She also was Mel Gibson's ex-wife in Tequila Sunrise. And by the way, if you haven't seen Tequila Sunrise, I have you're probably going, what? Tequila Sunrise is a movie that stars Michelle Pfeiffer and Kurt Russell and Mel Gibson. And coming up close behind Grace Kelly in Rear Window and and Sharon Stone in Basic Instinct, Michelle Pfeiffer's character, Joanne Volinari, and Michelle Pfeiffer in Tequila Sunrise is also one of my dream girls. If you go back and you look at my dream girl, it's not just the actress, it's the character they play. I love her character in that movie. I love the way she dresses. I love the way she talks. I love the way she's kind of like this wounded soul. I love Tequila Sunrise. It's not the greatest movie in the world, but it's a movie they don't make enough of. They don't make any of anymore. And man, somebody should make a sequel to it now. Nobody would, but it'd be cool if they did. So I love Anne Magnuson. She's also in Clear and Present Danger. Joaquin de Alameda, who's also should be in every movie ever made, ends up killing her in Clear and Present Danger. That's Anne Magnuson. She plays Admiral Clancy. So I loved seeing it. I wish she didn't say sheer fucking hubris, but man, do I love her. Love her so very much. But I would like to have seen Janeway. But it's kind of cool they created this new character. But they write her. She's such, you go back and you watch Admiral Nechayev, Natalia Nagulich, who, by the way, I love. The relationship that Picard has with this admiral, I hate the way it's written. you've got Ann Magnuson. She's like, sheer fucking hubris. Fuck you. And blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I hate her character. I hate the way she's written, but I love her because she's Ann Magnuson. I love that actress. But the way she's written is terrible. Why do they do that to her? That show is so badly written. It's so badly written. Picard sucks. I'm sorry. It really bothers me. Every time I think about each scene, I'm like, why is Space Legolas still fighting Romulans off in the hallways of the Borg Cube? Now that Seven of Nine's there, I guess he doesn't. I mean, Seven of Nine just like waltzes in and takes over the cube. Who are these people? Why are they so incompetent? God, I hate that show. No, I'm not going to stop watching it. Mark C. sent in a super chat and said, good film with not enough attention, Ruckus, starring Dirk Benedict, Linda Blair, and Ben Johnson. It was First Blood before Stallone. I don't know Ruckus. I don't know Ruckus. I'll have to watch it, Mark. I'll have to watch it. Mark C. sends in another super chat and says, Lucky Baldwins, have a Chimay Blue Label for me. Well, you've been so generous with your super chats. I'll have like 10. I mean, not today, but I could have like 10 if I wanted to. I could. So, yeah. Let's see. I got more letters. I got another letter to read. This one, hey, it's been a while. Hang on. Let me see. Hang on. This comes from John Suntrys. John Suntrys, who has the Word Balloon podcast, of course, that I was on. If you haven't listened to the Word Balloon podcast, he does a great pop culture podcast, especially if you love comic books. This comes in from John. Hey, Rob, watching Wednesday's show about where do the new mid-budget movies go? Movie theaters or streaming? I think filmgoers are partly more gun-shy about buying a theater ticket. In a similar way, the music industry lost business. Sure, Napster's free downloads hurt most of all, but also the price of CDs grew to an obnoxious price, while the production costs making CDs versus vinyl were drastically cheaper. Did the record companies adjust the price point? Of course not. What film is singularly worth at $10 to $15 a ticket compared to the comfort of watching these films as part of a similarly priced monthly fee streaming? A service that also includes hundreds of more options of films and TV shows yet to be discovered. Watching film habits have changed, and just like the record industry before it, the film and TV biz are the last to know and act. Maybe they'll avoid the record label's fate. Talk soon, and thanks for always plugging Word Balloon. That would be the Word Balloon podcast, John Suntrys' Word Balloon podcast, which is one of the best Word Balloon podcasts out there. Actually, it's the only Word Balloon podcast out there that's called Word Balloon. But do yourself a favor and check in to John's podcast. It is really very interesting. A great letter. I think you're right. I mean, look, when I say mid-level thriller, The Hunt for Red October was a movie that even in adjusted dollars probably wasn't going to cost $200 million. Maybe it would now, but I miss seeing movies like Hunt for Red October in the theater. Man, that movie, I'll tell you, that movie is so... There's things about movies. Why do we love movies? The Hunt for Red October is everything about it is delicious. Elizabeth, she thinks it's boring. And she doesn't like it when... Like, I went through a phase where I watched The Big Short like every night for a month. Swear to God. I love The Big Short. Everything about The Big Short is delicious to me, from the actors to the editing to the scenes, the transitions. I mean, The Big Short is everybody that works for Steve Carell in The Big Short. That one actor who's on, I don't even know his name, but the one actor he's on Succession. I think he's Brian Cox's son. I've never watched Succession. I think it's Succession, right? But he's the actor who's in the... I love this guy. I don't even know his name. I love when he's on screen. I love his character in The Big Short. He works for Steve Carell. Like, and when movies are put together and you've got a great cast and the music transitions, the editing, like everything comes together, like every bit of the music. And the way that when hard and cold, when Raimi says hard and cold, Riga or whatever, and the camera pans up and you see the Red October going out and the music starts, Basil Paul. Everything about movies, like those movies, I can't imagine watching that on streaming for the first time. It would have bummed me out. Seeing Hunt for Red October, everything about it, everything was so well thought out and so well constructed. Such thought was put into it. So when you're watching it, you're just like, God damn, this movie tastes good. You know what? You know how it's delicious. Using food metaphors or whatever to talk about movies, but I love that, and I don't care. I mean, I've got a good home theater system and all that at home. Still, when I'm watching a movie, It just doesn't have the same impact. I can't imagine seeing Hunt for Red October for the first time or Empire Strikes Back on streaming. You know, you want to see him in a big theater with people and, you know, hearing those gasps. And I remember seeing Star Wars for the first time and everybody was like reading under their breath when the opening crawl was going on. I love that. I love that people are reading in a movie theater and you're like, and you're doing it too. I miss that. I don't want that to go away. I don't want it to go all streaming. I don't want movie theaters to die. You know? They should have tax-exempt status, by God. Anyway, thanks for the letter, John. I appreciate it. This comes from Samuel O'Neill. Hi, Rob. This is a rather short letter, so here we go. I listened to episode 275, I think it was. Wow. And there was mention about the most recent Charlie's Angel movie and the director's comments after the release as to why it failed and putting some of the blame on the male audience. Frankly, I couldn't give two shits who stars in a film, be it male or female. Whatever people call themselves, alien, non-binary, who fucking cares, bro? That's what it says, who fucking cares, bro? Give me a good story I can wrap my small brain around and let me get lost in your story, and I'm a happy camper. There is my little gripe as my 11 and 12-year-old, as my year 11 and 12 head off would say thank you for what you do and there is my little gripe as my year 11 and year 12 head off. They would say thank you for what you do and have a ripper of a day. Sam from Brizzy, Australia. From Brisbane, right? Have a ripper of a day. I love that. We're going to incorporate that. Yes, have a ripper of a day. And as always, have a ripper of a day. I like that. Have a ripper of a day. I like that, Samuel. Have a ripper of a day. I don't think I've ever heard that before. That's pretty good. This one comes from Pedro Ferreira. I'm sorry, Pedro. I voted for you, though. Hi, Rob. I Twitter messaged you a couple of weeks ago asking you about Inglorious Trexpert's view of politics. Oh, as I was told to go watch the Beverly Hillbillies. Okay. Pedro, I guess, contacted Mark on Twitter about something political, and Mark told him to go watch the Beverly Hillbillies instead. I would say, Mark, shame on you. You don't do that, but I don't remember exactly. But since Twitter doesn't allow me to type much, I thought I'd message the full story here. Here it comes. I asked on the Inglorious Trexpert's Twitter page whether someone who is not left-wing can appreciate the values of Star Trek. I think they can. It had me thinking ever since Marina Sirtis did that interview where she says she didn't see the point in non-left-wing people watching the show, as by nature Star Trek is progressive. As someone who has always identified as center in my political views and likes society to have a balance of both liberal and conservative values, which is no longer the case, unfortunately, am I just missing something? I've watched Star Trek since 1990, when I was 8, and I have come to love and appreciate the first 5 series. The show's guided you in a progressive way, but never exclusively sided with one political side. I learned a lot from TNG growing up. I was told by one of your group that while it was just his opinion, if I can't appreciate the progressive values of Star Trek, I'm better off watching the Beverly Hillbillies, which I found dismissive and rude. It was dismissive and rude. Not the worst thing someone has said to me, but I expected more from your group channel. Allow me to take this opportunity to apologize to you for that. I know it wasn't you who responded. Doesn't sound like Darren or Ashley's style. I think it might have been Mark who responded, but I cannot confirm that 100%. Oh, I can. Not sure who else it could be. I was really nice in the Twitter message as well, praising your show and asking if they'd answer a complex question in advance. I know I'm dyslexic and have Asperger's, so I see things in the world differently, but I don't think I don't get it. People at the moment, mostly fans who like Kurtzman's Star Trek, feel Star Trek should be just political. When you look at Star Trek from 1966 to 2005, it wasn't exclusively political. Star Trek to me is about the journey of the humanity across the universe. Journey of humanity, of the humanity, you could say it. You're right. That can include politics, but it's not obsessed with it. Star Trek, more than anything, is philosophical. The franchise's values were both left and right, How many times do they go to war, which is right wing, and how many times do they avoid war, which is left wing, I guess? I think it's both. I think going to war isn't necessarily just right wing, and avoiding war isn't necessarily just left wing. There was both, and I feel modern Star Trek completely misses these points. It absolutely does. It is easy to want to echo Spock from the undiscovered country and say, have we all grown so old and so inflexible as to outlive our usefulness? But I don't feel like supporting something that currently feels immoral, irresponsible, and corrupt. Am I just not drinking the Kool-Aid of modern Star Trek? Would like to know your thoughts on this. Kind regards, Pedro. Well, first of all, I think you're right when you say that current Star Trek feels immoral, irresponsible, and corrupt. I feel it does. I feel that the people working on Star Trek, it literally is a paycheck job for them. And I feel that no one who's worked on Star Trek previously, sure, it's always had those kinds of people, but the people that ran it, they were passionate about Star Trek. And, listening to Michael Chabon answer questions, he's clearly passionate about it. I know that Kirsten Beyer is, but I do think Star Trek has become corrupt. Let's try and get as many shows into production as possible, whether they're good or not. I mean, they've made two of the most expensive TV shows ever made. And I think that they are, immoral, irresponsible, and corrupt is right up there. Look, first of all, like I said, I'm sorry that Mark was dismissive. Mark can be that way. His bark is worse than his bite, though. Mark was a very good friend to me, and we did a lot of good work together. But he can be that way. And that was something I don't approve of, and I wouldn't have. Mark has always been very dismissive of fans, even though he's made his living in the fan circles. And I always embrace fans. Like when we would go to conventions together, he's like, he would always say to me, "Do you have to talk to everybody?" And I'm like, "Well, yes. Isn't that why we're here?" Now I've got this outlet, and I can talk to everybody for hours at a time. But look, I think that Star Trek, I think left wing and left and conservative, right wing and left wing, there is a meeting point between the two. Like if you were to draw circles, they would meet. There is a section, this ridiculous tribalism that has taken over all facets of our lives it's pernicious. And what it does is it dumbs down the discourse. I watch a lot of conservative commentators to hear their points of view, and there are a lot of conservative commentators that are quite worth listening to. And yet a lot of people would poo-poo them, that I would listen. Oh, you shouldn't listen to them. I'm like, what? Look, do I listen to Rush Limbaugh? No. I used to. 30 years ago when I was a PA, I drove around a lot when I was a runner and stuff. You drove around, and I would listen to Rush Limbaugh's show on the EIB network. He was a very, very different man than he is today. Because I he had I thought it was a pretty well-balanced political show. I don't recognize the man that Rush Limbaugh became, but I liked his show when I was listening to it 30 years ago. I think that, again, just like imagination connoisseurs, we are all fans of science fiction, fantasy, and horror. That's why we're here. And as Americans, if we're all Americans, if that's our baseline, how come we can't talk to each other? It's lame. I don't like it. I don't approve. Conservatives, left, right wing, we should all be able to get into a room and have a conversation about considering everybody's points of view. I really believe that. And that's what I don't understand. To me, it's intellectual, cogent intellectual discourse, thoughtful discourse. You have all different points of view. I don't just believe it. And I think the right wing and the left wing, as they go further apart from one another, they're missing the point. They're missing the point. The real progressives. I've been attacked by, as I've said, I don't necessarily fear the far right because you see them coming a mile away. I fear the far left, people that should be, I guess, on my side of the aisle. They're going to be the ones that come after me first. They're the ones that are going to find out what my Amazon list is. They're going to see what movies and books I've bought over the last 10 years. They're going to come after me for liking A Clockwork Orange. So I think that Star Trek is a place for humanity, for all humanity, whether you have right-wing beliefs or left-wing beliefs. At least classic Star Trek is about mankind being better, And I think when we start limiting people and saying only this is only for left-wingers or this is only for right-wingers. We're doing everybody a grave disservice. I think we need to start, everybody should talk. And what people don't realize too is that, I said this yesterday on the show, the United States is a big, big place. And if you live in the Midwest, or you live on a coastal city, or you have very different experiences of day-to-day life. If you live in a small town, it's very different than living in LA. And it's all one nation under God. That's what America is. Indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have to start understanding that on our baseline, we believe in America. And we should really get back to, instead of talking about, we should start looking at our what was the spirit this country was built in? What was the intent? The gun issue, I think, is a great issue. You go look at the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, the right to a well-organized militia. Do you really think the founding fathers, if you really look at what they're saying, wanted everybody to have the kind of weapons that are available today? They couldn't conceive of where these kinds of weapons were. So when that amendment was written, you have to understand that I think talking about it rationally, forget what you think about what you want. What you want, like guns. I like guns. Let's face it, guns are fun. It is fun to shoot guns. People who like guns. But we have a huge gun epidemic in this country. A huge gun epidemic. And everyone always, you hold up the Second Amendment. Well, there's a lot of people that are not mature enough or either to have guns. Now, I'm not saying everybody isn't mature enough, but we have a gun problem in this country. We do. And rather than sit down and go, okay, how are we going to solve this gun problem? Why not make it like cars? You have to take classes for 6 months. You have to have a psychological evaluation, and then you have to sit down, and maybe it takes you a year to get a gun license. Is that so bad? I don't know. It's a right-wing, left-wing issue. They're going to take away my guns. Well, no one's going to take away your guns, but why not? We have a gun problem. We have people dying, and no one is doing anything about it. Our tribalism and our people are not mature enough to sit down and go. What's amazing to me is look at the response to coronavirus. I have to say, it's been pretty. As I've watched the country, as soon as when Donald Trump stopped calling this a Democratic hoax, and started mobilizing the administration to do something, it has been pretty amazing to see how quickly everybody has responded. In rational ways, they made the hard choices, and they just stopped doing what they're doing. Let's do that with guns. Why is that so hard? Why is it so hard? Let's fix the problem. I don't understand. But you know what? Star Trek is for everybody. It's being written now as it's some kind of left-wing, far left progressive fucking I don't know what, but like you said, it's corrupt, it's craven, it's anyway, to answer your question, Pedro, Star Trek should be for everybody. It should be for human beings. And yes, was Roddenberry a secular humanist? He absolutely was. I think that secular humanism is probably the way we should move forward as a species, but that shouldn't infringe on somebody's right to believe what they want to believe, to worship the God they want to worship in the way they want to worship. But since we're different kinds of people, I believe in separation of church and state. I think that's very important. And I know that people that are right-wingers would want to see prayers brought into schools. I think that's wrong. I think it doesn't belong in schools. But that's just me. But that's also what the government says. But I thank you for writing that letter. I don't know. This letter is another letter from Tari Igruz. Although it's pronounced Terry, okay. Instead of Terry Igruz. You know why I said Tari? Because on my street growing up, Tari, there was a girl named Tari Cook. The first girl I ever kissed. Tari Cook, and she pronounced it Tari, T-A-R, but you're saying it's Terry. Okay. Dear Rob, wow, thank you for actually reading my letter so soon. I was watching the stream while at work and actually couldn't believe it when I heard my name, although it's pronounced Terry, like Harry, but starting with a T. Thank you again. Now, I didn't think I'd be sending in another letter so soon, and yet here I am, scrambling to find something interesting to say. So I thought I would ask you about tarot cards. You are not the first person who's written to me about tarot cards. And by the way, Are you watching Manifest? Because if you're not, they have a big subplot about tarot cards. I'm not suggesting you should. Manifest is my own personal heaven and hell. But yes. Essentially, I'm obsessed with tarot cards. I don't necessarily believe in anything supernatural, but I am fascinated by mythology and storytelling. Do you have any interest or knowledge of tarot cards? Well, I own over 10 tarot card decks, but they're just collector's items for me. I don't do readings. I have the official Dave McKean illustrated Vertigo. You know what? I might have read this letter before. I have the official Dave McKean illustrated Vertigo Sandman deck, a Yoshika Amano illustrated deck, an Azumi Kasao illustrated deck, the classic Raider Waite deck, which is actually illustrated by a black woman, a Kabbalistic deck by Eugene Vintitsky, and a deck made by indie comics artist Joe Sparrow. Please look up some images if you can. Additionally, I also custom made and printed my own Watchmen deck, which fit into a 9-panel grid the size of a traditional comic. Oh man, I want to get one of those. A DC Comics superhero deck, a Naruto manga deck, a Bleach manga deck, and a Cliff Chang Wonder Woman deck. I do have Marvel Comics superhero deck and a Star Wars deck, but they're not printed yet. I also created my own card game based on tarot cards too. Here are the links to my tarot cards, and they're there. You know what? I'm going to put this in the live chat, because why not? You know what? I can't believe it's 3:20. I've been going for a long time. I think it's time to end this chat, to be honest. Here is his tarot cards. Let me put this in the live chat. So check it out. There you go. Well, Terry, thanks again, Terry. Hopefully this is of interest to you. Sorry for the rushed message. That is once again not proofread. Thanks again, Terry. Well, Terry, thank you. I don't think I did read this letter, but somebody else wrote in about tarot cards as well. How cool is that? Awesome. I've got, let's see, I've got to go back. Wow. Let's see. Okay. Yitzhak Goldberg says, would This Island Earth make for a good remake? I love This Island Earth. The Metaluna Mutant is one of the great movie monsters. And it would make for a good remake, I think. Absolutely. I think so. Mystery Science Theater made fun of it. That's one of the reasons I don't like when Mystery Science Theater makes fun of Danger Diabolic or This Island Earth or My Beloved Star Crash. But they did. And I think This Island Earth would make for a good remake. I like This Island Earth. PC sends in a tip and says, I'm a girl, and there's 2 Lucky Baldwin locations. There's actually 3. There's one in Sierra Madre, too. Which one? I go to the one on Colorado that has hard liquor. The one downtown Pasadena, I'm 2 blocks away from the... Actually, 3 blocks away from the Lucky Baldwin's right by PCC. There's also, it's right across the street from a great gaming store. So if you like board games, you play strategy games, there's a great gaming store, and it's just west of Allen on Colorado Boulevard. So it's west of Allen and east of Pasadena City College. I go there a lot. I'm probably going to go there today. It feels like a Lucky Baldwin day. I like to go there with Gilbert and Tallulah because I walk them there, and you can hang out outside. They allow you to have dogs, and they feed them. They have great chicken, and I think I will go with them because Gilbert and Tallulah, they deserve it. It's been raining. So there you go. So yeah, PC. If there's people that live, if Mark Chure is around and PC is around, maybe we should do a live broadcast because I can turn my, I did it once before, I can turn my phone, into a hotspot and I can literally broadcast out of my laptop. So maybe we should have a Lucky Baldwin's Robservations meetup. That would be fun. Come on down. That would be fun. Do a Robservations from... The problem is my laptop's kind of old and I can't hook up an external mic to it. The internal mic's okay. Maybe if I take one of these... I got some equipment. I got to look into that. I'll check that out. So yeah, Johnny Mendoza says, Rob, is that a Star Blazers Battleship Andromeda? I don't know where you're looking. Are you looking up there? That is not. That is V'ger. Wait a minute. Hang on. Let me put this up. Are you looking that? Maybe it was that. That's V'ger. That's V'ger, I'd say. I don't know where you're looking. It is not, by the way. If you're looking up there, that is not the battleship Andromeda, but I do have one. I do have the Soul of Chogokin space battleship Andromeda, which is one of my favorite spaceships in any movie. I also have Captain Harlock's ship and also the Yamato over there. And I actually have a 1/350th scale model of Yamato that's like this big, which I haven't built. That's over there. I will display these when I do an episode of Off the Shelf, which will be fun to do. So there you go. Mukbang Review sends in a super chat and says, Succession was like Game of Thrones in the business world. Man, I got to watch it. It was shot on film. Please watch and react when time permits. I really want to watch Succession. I can't wait. Jamie Cruz says, do you have a Star Trek costume, TOS or other? I do not. I do not have a costume. I do not cosplay. But I have thought, if I was going to cosplay, if I was going to get I got to lose weight, though. I got to, drop 50 pounds. I really do. I'd look good. It's funny because I'm looking at my footage of me from 12 years ago, and that was when I was down to I weighed 195 pounds in high school. I was down to 205 because I've been working out with a trainer at that time, and it was great. It makes your face look good. You don't have such a chin, but I should because I'm working with all these younger whippersnappers on the Schmodown, and when I worked out, it's 4 days a week, and you have to watch your you can't drink, and if you do drink, it's usually once a week, and only drink vodka with soda water. But I would, if I cosplayed anything, I wouldn't cosplay Star Trek. You know what I've always wanted to cosplay? Reuben Flagg from Howard Chaykin's comic American Flag. I'd get it all. I want to get the whole Plexus Ranger police leather outfit. I'd love to do that. It would be hugely expensive. Mark C. Comes in with another super chat and says, Curtis is flat out wrong. Being right-wing doesn't mean closing yourself off to outside ideas. If anything, conservatives need Star Trek more. This from a self-described right-wing alpha male. I agree with you. Absolutely. Everybody needs Star Trek. I totally believe that. Absolutely, 100%. Otaku Senpai says, Picard is playing Patrick Stewart very well. Is he? I don't like the fact he seems like he's a guest star in his own show. I mean, Patrick Stewart's a great actor, but it's like I want to see him slam his, in yesterday's Enterprise when he yells back at Guinan, "Not good enough, damn it, not good enough." I want that to happen. Where's that Picard? Mark C says, "Dude, I'm in Pittsburgh, but if I'm ever in the LA area, we will have a pint." Dude, if you're in Pittsburgh, did you go to the Dawn of the Dead event last year at Monroeville Mall? God damn, I wanted to go to that. Man, I love Pittsburgh. I've been in Pittsburgh once. It was great. I loved it there. There's some great bars in Pittsburgh. I love Pittsburgh. Three Rivers, right? Pittsburgh's awesome. Well, anyway, ladies and gentlemen, this brings me to an end of, it started out as a total bummer. I was talking for apparently 17 minutes. You couldn't hear me, so I started again. I will hang my head. I'll forever hang my head in shame because I'm an idiot. Or something happened. I have the live chat on this monitor, so I don't always look at it. But anyway, I'm going to bring an end to episode number 361 of Robservations, the show about something. And I want to thank everybody. Of course, my great moderating staff. I want to thank the great Mayor Mike Bodden. I want to thank Jordy Lyons. I want to thank Louis Yu. I always bring him up the rear, but why not talk about him up front? Then, of course, Detective Jim Boyers, and, of course, Greg Smith. The moderators make this community what it is. I want to thank them from the bottom of my heart. And I think that's great. And I really like going to this camera, so I will. So what I will say is, again, I thank you for supporting the channel in all the ways that you do, whether you're you're sending me tips or super chats. It's very, very generous. Thank you so much. I love writing letters, or when people write letters to me, I think that is great. You can write them at theburnettwork.net. You can also go to the Post-Geek Singularity Facebook page. And I also want to thank, by the way, Mike Bodden gets a special gold star today for coming up with a slogan for the Post-Geek Singularity, which is, "Together we are one." Herbert. No, I thought that was great. Together we are one. I added it to the opening credits of the opening title of Robservations. Together we are one. So the Richard, who is one of the administrators of the Post-Geek Singularity Facebook page. Go over there. Tell him I sent you. Go to the Post-Geek Singularity Facebook page. Join up. There's over 1,000 people there. The discussion remains lively. Everybody posts over there. It's a lot of fun. So thank you for that. And yeah, remember, first of all, stay safe, everybody. But everywhere you go, every person you meet has a story to tell you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And with that, what is it? Have a ripper of a day. Have a ripper of a day. And this thus ends. Oh, wait a minute. Sam O'Neill sends in a super chat. He says, update from last night, swear words which I can't say. God, I'm hungover. Sam Neill was asking if he should go out. Last night. I suggested he should, because if he was going out with his friends to a birthday party to a bar, you could just keep drinking whiskey and rubbing vodka on your hands. If you were worried, just stay away from people coughing on you. Well, Sam, I'm glad you're hungover. I'm not hungover, and I'm continuing to drink water. So I'm glad you had a good time, and I'm glad you stayed safe. But anyway, and as always, have a ripper of a day. And I'll see you tomorrow. Yes,